From 1909 to 1910, French journalist and author Gaston Leroux published his serialized novel, The Phantom of the Opera, in Le Gaulois, a French newspaper. Gaston Leroux then gave that novel to Hollywood filmmaker Carl Laemmle, who went on to cast Lon Chaney, the man of a thousand faces, as the Phantom in one of silent cinema's most iconic and enduring horror classics, 1925's The Phantom of the Opera. Since then, there's been a Phantom of the Opera adaptation nearly once a decade, if not more, and November 15th, 2025 will mark the 100th anniversary of the first surviving film adaptation of the Phantom of the Opera. Hello, my beautiful angels of music, my name is Summer, and welcome back to 100 Years of Phantom. Today we're going to be talking about the fantastically original, wildly entertaining Phantom of the Paradise, the 1974 rock opera that manages to take Gaston Leroux's novel, Goethe's Faust, and The Picture of Dorian Gray, and melds them into something that rivals, if not exceeds, Rocky Horror Picture Show in terms of pure camp. You know what? Actually, maybe I will say exceeds, simply because Rocky Horror Picture Show came out in 1975, while Phantom of the Paradise came out in 1974, meaning Winslow Leach strutted those precarious catwalks in a billowing cape so that Peppa could run. Okay, so a little content warning for any youths in the audience. This is a movie from the 70s about rock and roll. This means that there is content and themes of a sexual nature and lots of references to drugs, as well as some subtle themes of violence against women and the threat of self-harm, so those topics will be brought up sporadically throughout the video. When I first tried to watch this movie 10 to 12 years ago now, because time is a ceaseless march towards the sunset of our youth, I didn't immediately love it in the same way I loved the 1990s TV miniseries or the 2004 musical, because those more shocking themes did kind of blind me to everything else that was going on in the story. So I watched it, I put it on a shelf in the back of my mind labeled Phantom of the Opera adaptations I've seen, and then I moved on. But then time passed, the years rolled by, and in the meantime, I've watched a lot more movies. I have a better understanding now of cinema and genre, and also I've seen Game of Thrones, which has made everything else seem tame in comparison. So when I finally circled back to Phantom of the Paradise, I was able to appreciate the movie as a whole. And the movie as a whole? Oh, it's real good. So good, in fact, that while I've been enmeshed over here with my classic retellings of Phantom and their varying degrees of book accuracy, there was a whole fandom brewing over here that I knew nothing of, dedicated entirely to Phantom of the Paradise specifically, with conventions and fanzines and Phantom Paloozas in Winnipeg, and we'll get into Winnipeg, in honor of the film's 50th anniversary last year, and this film has been quietly influencing musicians and filmmakers for decades. Just sort of influencing from the background, from behind the curtain, not well known, tugging the strings, somewhat ghostly. Like a fan of the opera? According to the IMDb trivia page, 1, Phantom of the Paradise is Nicolas Cage's favorite Brian De Palma film. 2, Daft Punk is quoted as saying Phantom of the Paradise is our favorite film, the foundation for a lot of what we're about artistically. They say they've seen the movie over 20 times, and their whole leather suit, big silver mask look is a direct reference to this film's Phantom. And I can see it. I can see the vision. And 3, apparently, Jim Sharman, who worked with Andrew Lloyd Webber on Jesus Christ Superstar, showed Phantom of the Paradise to Andrew Lloyd Webber to be like, hey Andy, here's an idea. What if we made this into a stage musical? And while that didn't end up panning out, Andrew Lloyd Webber seeing Phantom of the Paradise did eventually lead to his creating the longest-running Broadway musical and the reason I'm making any of these videos in the first place, Andrew Lloyd Webber's The Phantom of the Opera. The Andrew Lloyd Webber stuff supposedly came from Little Nell Campbell, who played Columbia in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and that's all I can tell you about her. It's the last time I'm actually going to mention Rocky Horror Picture Show because I've only seen Rocky Horror one time, and I don't know anything else about it. I am not an authority on the Rocky Horror Picture Show. We're at the Paradise right now. Okay. Oh, and guess what? As I was working on this video, they announced that they are making a Phantom of the Paradise musical. This is a great time to be getting into this movie. Anyway, let's get into the movie itself. Just as a reminder of the format, I'm going to be doing a plot synopsis for the film, liberally sprinkled throughout with my thoughts, feelings, trivia, my thoughts and feelings on the trivia, followed by any remaining trivia I wasn't able to work into the synopsis, and then 2 rankings. 1 based on the film's accuracy as an adaptation of Gaston Leroux's Phantom of the Opera, and the second is my personal opinion on where Phantom of the Paradise ranks amongst other Phantom adaptations I've seen. But I am entirely underdressed for what this movie deserves, so let me just movie opens with a brief monologue from an unseen narrator as the screen-printed image of a dead bird slowly spirals down to the center of the screen, colors shifting from red to blue to purple to green. And the monologue gives us a brief history of Swan.
He has no other name.
A man who wrote and produced his first album at 14 and who has since become one of the richest and most powerful men in the music industry, single-handedly guiding global trends in pop culture, and who is now on the hunt for a new sound, the next big thing, something worthy to open
His own Xanadu, his own Disneyland.
His new theater and ultimate rock palace, the Paradise. This film, and I quote the narrator verbatim when I say this, is the story of that search, of that sound. The man who made it, the girl who sang it,
And the monster who stole it.
Fantastic opening, perfectly and succinctly laying the groundwork for the world we're about to dive into. And dive into it we do, because the second the narrator finishes speaking, the movie hard cuts to its first song, Goodbye Eddie.
We'll remember you forever.
A doo-woppy early rock bop that sounds straight from the 1950s, being sung by Swan's band and current favorites, the Juicy Fruits, with whom he
Single-handedly gave birth to the nostalgia wave of the 70s.
As they're singing, we cut away briefly. Ow. Hey. Hey there, pal. Looks like you're trying to show a tiny little less than 5-second long clip of the movie you're talking about to highlight a point you're making. Not today. I'm about to read a prepared statement. In a very fitting twist of events in light of the themes of this film, I find I must alter my art to make it more marketable. I must commodify my art. I got some copyright claims on this video, specifically for visuals that were keeping me from posting it at all. Like, it was like, hey, you've got these issues, pal, and you can't even post this. And I was like, no!
But I just want to make it clear that I was trying very hard in the first place to avoid any copyright issues. I don't want to infringe upon anyone's copyright. I was just trying to fair use, review this video, use some clips to highlight the points that I was making. I was making commentary, and I was showing the thing I was commenting on. I'm sorry.
Plan A, what I've done is I've pulled out all the offending materials. They sent me multiple time codes where the issues were. So I went through and I pulled every single clip from those time codes and I blurred them all to oblivion. That's plan A. And I'm gonna run that through and see if it works. Plan B is to replace every single clip that I pulled with this picture of my cat Mitzi. Only time will tell. So, as you were. All right. Safe driving, kid. As they're singing, we cut away briefly to outside of the theater, where a willowy man in a trench coat slaps a sign across the Juicy Fruits poster saying Winslow Leach will be playing piano. Back in the theater, the Juicy Fruits wrap up their song, having managed to stay on tune and on beat despite 2 of the 3 Juicy Fruits getting into a fight with members of the audience mid-performance, and they fling their arms up toward a mirrored panel that hangs above the stage. The crowd waits, hushed, and we switch points of view. We're now looking down at the Juicy Fruits as they eagerly wait for approval, until a pair of hands watching from behind the mirror starts to clap. And the crowd finally lets themselves go wild. Woo, we love the Juicy Fruits, woo! After that, we stay in the box seats behind that mirrored panel for a while, seeing everything from the point of view of that man who clapped, as he speaks to one of his underlings, until piano music finally captures his attention and his focus shifts down to the bare stage and the slowly emptying theater, where the willowy man in the beige trench coat now plays piano.
Listen. What?
Now, if we were watching the movie instead of me just telling you about it, maybe 10 minutes of the film's hour and 32-minute runtime would have elapsed. But what's this in my hand? Oh, it's the remote control. 'Cause I'm pausing. I have things to say already. In terms of storytelling, this is probably one of the most intricately layered films I have ever seen, and this opening sequence is an excellent example of this. Every aspect of filmmaking is being used to its full extent. The first thing you pick up on, of course, when the movie starts, we get that hard cut to the opening song, is the performance of the Juicy Fruits. Started singing when he was 5. The set is bright, colorful, full of cheering extras. The music is fun and catchy, and the song actually has a narrative to follow. The Juicy Fruits are singing about a man named Eddie who finds fame but not quite enough fortune when his sister gets sick, and he decides to end his own life in the hopes that the notoriety of his death will bring enough sales and revenue to pay for the medical needs of his sister.
You gave all you could give so your sister could live.
This performance is immediately followed up by a monologue from Philbin. And yes, that is Philbin, as in Mary Philbin, as in the first Christine ever to be put to screen, Mary Philbin. And Philbin is Swan's right-hand man. Philbin, he's talking nonstop, rattling off this monologue for a full minute of screen time, maybe even 2 before Swan finally cuts him off. And he's lamenting the fact that the woman who was
More than a piece to me. She was the light of my life.
the woman he had personally brought to Swan and that Swan had then made famous, was suing them both and throwing away the career they'd built for her on charity concerts for orphans. So verbally and audibly, we've got this onslaught of information. The narrative of the song, the way the crowd interacts to the music, the way they wait, hushed, for Swan to start clapping before they let themselves clap, the details of Philbin's monologue that build on and expand the lore of the world and the character of Swan that were introduced in that opening narration. At the same time, visually, there's multiple other stories also being told. In regards to Swan, this mysterious character that we heard of in the opening narration, we've yet to see him on screen. He's just sort of a presence. The only part of Swan we have seen is his hands as he clapped. And this is because once the Juicy Fruits have their accolades from Swan, we pretty quickly switch to seeing the world from Swan's point of view. And everything we see from Swan's point of view illustrates his position of power. Philbin, seated, is looking up at Swan, up at us, staring directly down the barrel of the camera that is Swan. And then, of course, during the performance and during the clapping, Swan was looking down on the Juicy Fruits. The framing and focus also highlight Swan's control. He is in charge even of what the viewer, us, the audience, sees. Now, it's sort of common sense movie viewing 101 that if someone is on screen, in focus, and speaking, they are likely what you're meant to be looking at and paying attention to. And so, Philbin, as he laments the upcoming lawsuit, is in sharp focus. He's almost centered in the frame, he's speaking a lot of words, he has the attention of both Swan the character and Swan the camera, and because of that, Philbin has our attention too. But there's been something going on in the background, and that something is the film's subtle introduction to the character of Winslow Leach. We caught a glimpse of Winslow during Goodbye Eddie, and even that quick clip of him pasting his own promo over the Juicy Fruits poster, you can tell from his whole demeanor, the way he storms into frame, the way he slaps the paper and paste onto the wall, that this is a man who does not care for the Juicy Fruits, who thinks himself above the Juicy Fruits. There's an air of self-importance to his actions that carries through the rest of the film and informs the rest of Winslow's slowly unfurling introduction. Because even as Swan focuses on Philbin and assures him there's no need to worry,
and that is nothing finished or stuff.
Winslow is in the background. The Juicy Fruits leave the stage. Stagehands come and start clearing the instruments. Somebody starts sweeping. The audience is filtering out, but Winslow, undeterred, drags a piano onto the stage. Somebody brings him a stool, and he sets up his music and starts to play to the few people who remain in their seats.
You and I, the paradise.
I know, boss. We've looked everywhere.
And it's only when Swan hears Winslow's music, cuts Philbin off, and shifts his and the camera's focus to Winslow that we get to see Winslow clearly down below.
What?
And the camera is allowed once more to move independently of Swan. And then I'll put the, I was not myself last night, couldn't do things right, with apologies all for loud. This theme of Swan and cameras, footage recording, is something we see throughout the entire movie, though Swan, as the camera, is only utilized in this opening scene. And this theme would have been even more prominent throughout the film if not for one of several legal battles that were going on behind the scenes. The film was originally going to be called Phantom, but the title was changed to avoid legal issues since there was already a character... Oh, hi, Binkus. Anything to add? The film was originally just going to be called Phantom, but the title was changed to avoid legal issues since there was a comic book character already called the Phantom. Then there was the double whammy of copyright issues with both Universal Studios and Gaston Leroux's estate since, surprise, surprise, this movie called Phantom of the Paradise, about a masked musician terrorizing a theater because he was obsessed with a singer, bore a lot of resemblance to two movies and a book called Phantom of the Opera about a masked musician terrorizing a theater because he was obsessed with a singer. Who would have guessed? Who would have ever guessed? Bitsy girl, can you please go sit down? Can you sit down? Can you sit down? If I poke you enough, will you sit down? Will you sit down? Will you go sit down in your window seat? Will you sit? Will you sit in your window seat? Mitty bobby bitty girl, Mitty bobitty girl, Mitty, Mitty, Mitty. Watch, she doesn't like to get picked up. I'm going to try to pick her up now, and she will run away from me.
Come here, come here. I'm gonna get you.
Okay, now she's... She's back in her window seat. All right, let's try that from the top. But one of the biggest ones was the lawsuit brought on by Led Zeppelin's record label. So, Swan. He's already been established as a man of great power and influence in the narrative. He was originally going to be called Spectre because he was loosely inspired by famed producer Phil Spector, and Swan is somewhat supernatural in ways we will get to shortly, but they ended up ultimately going with the name Swan. Swan runs Death Records under the banner of Swan Song Enterprises. In the original cut of this film, the director's vision, there was this ongoing visual motif that highlighted Swan's power and prestige. New scenes would open on a shot of a surveillance camera with the Swan Song logo emblazoned across the side. Then, the shot would pan down from the Swan Song camera to the action of the scene, showing that Swan was almost all-powerful, with eyes everywhere, highlighting that he wasn't just powerful in the music industry and as a maker of pop culture, but was actually one of the most powerful men in the world. Now, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, a swan song, noun, is defined as 1, a song of great sweetness said to be sung by a dying swan, or 2, a farewell appearance or final act of pronouncement. So it's a common phrase that stems from the belief that a swan will sing one beautiful song before it dies, and it originated in times of great antiquity, like origins in Greek legends and Aesop's fables and stuff. Listen, for this information, I just sort of skimmed the first few paragraphs of the Wikipedia for the phrase swan song. We're just going to be vague about its etymology. Just times of great antiquity, okay? So a swan song is generally one last beautiful act before the curtain falls, ne'er to be raised again, and is often used in relation to performers before the final bow of their career. My point being, swan song is a phrase that's been around for a while, and the themes of death, final acts, swans, and swan songs had been well woven into the script, and because it was well woven into the script, that was reflected in the set dressing. So you've got big banners saying Swan Song Enterprises, you've got logos, you've got signs on buildings, you've got signs on cameras, you've got big swans everywhere, you got posters, so those were all made because it was reflected in the script. And since all of those things were reflected in the script and on the set, they were of course filmed for the movie, and this movie was slated to be released in late 1974. But in early 1974, May of that year, in fact, a mere 5 months before Phantom of the Paradise would release in theaters on November 1st, or potentially in October if you're listening to the Swan Archives, Led Zeppelin started Swan Song Records and sued Phantom of the Paradise over the Swan Song name, threatening to block the release of the film. Now, this was a battle that director and writer Brian De Palma believed they could win, since Swan Song is a common phrase of great antiquity. But him and the rest of the Phantom of the Paradise team were under financial pressure from Fox to take care of this issue ahead of this film's premiere so that it wouldn't get delayed. A legal battle would have pushed it further down the line. So instead of fighting the legal battle, they ended up cutting this beautiful recurring motif of the all-seeing Swan Song cameras. And you can kind of get glimpses and echoes of this in the film. You can see the Swan Song logo in scenes where it's mostly out of frame or partially cut off, or else it's too far away to be truly legible. But in most of the scenes where the logo was there, they had to mask the name with just the Death Records logo, or take scenes where there was supposed to be one long continuous shot and cut it into pieces so that you could no longer see Swan Song Enterprises. This is the case when we see Winslow pasting up his poster, or a bit later in the film when Winslow tries to speak to Swan at Death Records.
Hello.
In a movie where I've already had this much to say after only 10 minutes of the film, it's a real shame that we didn't get to see the director's intended vision. The movie still works, of course. Swan comes across as powerful, but perhaps not quite as inescapable as he would have if the film had been allowed to premiere in its original form. And as an artist myself who loves paying attention to little details, I can only imagine how gutting it would be to have to cut out such a rich, carefully laid visual metaphor. Release the Swan song cut. Release it. Even the idea of Swan as the camera that we get in this opening scene is strengthened by this theme. We don't see Swan, we see what Swan sees. We see what the camera sees because Swan is the camera and Swan is always watching. So it adds to that sense of Swan's power. I found out about these edits originally because I was looking through the special features on my copy of the movie. There was a little featurette with a whole bunch of outtakes that explained the original motif and the reason the motif was cut and showed the original takes as they'd been shot. Then at the end, it said footage courtesy of Swan Archives with a website listed underneath. The Swan Archives, which we've not yet reached in the narrative because remember I paused the movie after 10 minutes, plays a significant role in the film's finale, so color me intrigued when I find that the archives seem to have escaped the bounds of the film. So I go to my little browser on my phone and I type in swanarchives.org, I hit enter, and what do I find? I find this landing page. And do you want to know what's written on there? It says, "The Swan Archives is a division of the Swan Foundation, the nonprofit wing of Swan Song Enterprises. The Swan Archives is dedicated to preserving for posterity the legacy of Swan, he had no other name, the most successful record producer and entertainment entrepreneur in history." And as you scroll further, you see a picture of the Phantom. And does it say William Finley as the Phantom in Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise? No. It says this photo of the murderer swinging down from above was taken by wedding guest Abe Zapruder Jr., who happened by coincidence to be aiming his camera toward the ceiling at the crucial moment. So this thing is written like an ARG, and my brain very nearly snapped in half because I was like, how does this movie that was made in the 1970s have an ARG website? This was actually what I was worried about. This is what I thought was going to ruin Christmas, because how on earth was I supposed to talk about the myriad aspects of this film that needed to be lifted out and discussed in detail if I was also trying to handle an ARG? Thankfully, that was just the first page. What the Swan Archives actually is a treasure trove of information and trivia about Phantom of the Paradise. The people who made this website, they love Phantom of the Paradise. They love this film. Almost everything I know about this movie, I got from the Swan Archives. I didn't even need to look anywhere else. They have a day-by-day breakdown of the production and shooting schedule, which goes into issues the film was having with money and how the crew on payday would race to the bank in hopes of getting their paycheck cashed out before the money in the account ran out. And if you didn't get there soon enough, you just didn't get paid. It was something to do with like CDs that weren't producing fast. I don't know, bank stuff. It explained the bank stuff, but I'm not a financier. I'm not a financier. I don't know what CDs are, unless you're talking about compact discs, in which I do recall those from my youth. It went into details about fires on set that caused production delays, and it showed pictures of Big Red, the courthouse in Texas that serves as the exterior of the Swanage, Swan's Manor. There's a page dedicated to the themes of the film, and there's a page dedicated to the initial flawed marketing plan and how it negatively impacted the release, but how the second marketing plan helped turn the tide, and how a one-off approach they tried in Canada resulted in the film being shown in Winnipeg theaters for almost a full year. The people who made the Swan Archive started the website because they loved the movie and because they had managed to purchase reels of unopened outtake footage from Phantom of the Paradise that had just been left moldering since the 70s. So they got the footage just before it was decayed beyond use, and they were able to digitally preserve it. And they didn't want a big corporation to snap up the footage and hide it away from people, so they made it publicly available on the Swan Archives. The website says they did reach out to Brian De Palma and editor Paul Hirsch to see if either of them wanted the footage, but De Palma told them to hold on to it for the time being, and Hirsch told them if they ever wanted to edit the movie into its original vision with those outtakes, he would be happy to help. Wrapping up the Swan Archive saga, they did eventually give the footage to Arrow Films for use on their DVD release of The Phantom of the Paradise, which was in turn used on this Scream Factory Blu-ray that I now own. So, in conclusion, the Swan Archives are really cool. I ended up spending somewhere around 4 to 8 hours just reading the website, and it had everything I could possibly want to know about this film and more besides. In fact, they have a whole page dedicated to breaking down the movie scene by scene and its themes and its details, and I daren't even touch it. I didn't even open that page of the website because I knew I needed to get my own house in order and line my own thoughts up on this film before I could possibly try and take on the weight of somebody with that much passions, details, and stuff. Like, I have This script, my Google Doc is over 100 pages long, and 20 pages of it is just notes I took on details from the website. So, I had to draw the line in the sand somewhere. I had to say no. I had to say, get away from me. I'll come back maybe later when I've made this video and I've moved on, and then I'll regret it because I'll say, oh, that's a detail I could have added. I got something wrong, but I had to say no. I had to say, stop. You have to just go. Some of you have to start doing it or you'll never get done. Christmas is almost canceled. You have to go. But it's a bonkers good resource, and everybody should check the Swan Archives out. swanarchives.org. Really cool website. Okay, good heavens. I've made the points I want to make about the first 10 minutes of the movie, so let's hit play. Boop, and continue on. Hey, just listen. We are in a battle right now against my love of detail with my desire to not spend upwards of 60 hours editing this video, and I have a terrible feeling that my love of details is going to win, so I'm going to try to skim where I can. And forgive me if I do, I'm trying to do this for all our sakes.
I don't skim. That was the hopes of a more optimistic woman.
So let's lay down what happens in the next chunk of the movie and then loop back to the things I want to talk about. Swan hears Winslow's music and he wants it for the Paradise.
You want that creep to open a paradise? No, not him. Music.
Philbin meets with Winslow in the dressing room and gives him the good news and asks for 2 or 3 of his best songs. Winslow, delighted by the prospect of working with Swan, explains that he can't break his music up into a handful of songs.
You don't understand. The scope of this cantata is 200 or 300 pages long, and I haven't finished yet.
He's written a great epic, a modern retelling of Faust, which is also the name of the second song on the movie's soundtrack, and probably my favorite song of the film. Philbin's just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. He just wants Winslow to give him the music so that he can get out of there. And in an effort to sort of sweeten the pot, Philbin's like,
I think the juicy fruits are gonna dig it.
only for Winslow to...
I'm not gonna let my music be mutilated by those grease balls. I am the only one who can sing Faust.
So, Winslow Leach clearly has a bit of a temper and a distaste for the juicy fruits, and most importantly, he wrote his cantata for himself. Philbin is understandably a little shaken at this interaction, even as Winslow apologizes and hands the music over.
It's just that I worked so hard on this thing.
It's okay, kid.
He just hands his music over. He hands it over. He doesn't sign anything. He doesn't get any money. No contract for Giacomo. And scene. Time passes, and Winslow still has not heard from Swan. And eventually he tries to go to the Death Record offices. Winslow asks to see Swan, but when the receptionist looks for his name on the unalphabetized list of celebrities, the only thing listed under Winslow Leach is the phrase, never to be seen. And can I just for one moment pause and admire this? There is a very specific Art Deco, Art Nouveau aesthetic to Swan's branding that I, as a graphic designer by trade, greatly admire. We can see it in the Swan Song Enterprises sign on the building, which was far away from the camera that it wasn't masked. You can see it briefly on this shot of the door that was saved from being cut because Swan Song was in reverse. And you can see it here on this piece of lined paper that someone painstakingly cut out and taped the words never to be seen. I don't know why, but that delights me to no end. The time and effort it took to print and then carefully cut out each letter and tape it on lined paper. I don't know the reason behind it. There's probably an explanation as to why. Maybe that was just a common practice in pre-digital graphic design, but there's just this beautiful human fingerprint of the artist aspect to seeing those little pieces of tape that I just adore because it gives a little insight into all the hard work and craft that went on behind the scenes. It's like being in a museum and looking at a watercolor painting and realizing, like, under the sheerest layer of paint, you can still see the pencil sketch that the artist originally laid down before they started painting. And suddenly, you're not just seeing a completed work, you're seeing the artist at their desk, sketching, pencil in hand, and it just reminds you that somebody made this. They crafted it and built it with their hands, and it just delights me to no end. I just love it. Fun fact, the production designer, Jack Fisk, fired his whole crew on the first day of shooting, and in the scramble to replace them, he had his now wife, Sissy Spacek, be in charge of set dressing. Yes, that Sissy Spacek who plays Carrie in Carrie 1976, the classic horror film also directed by Brian De Palma. So that means there is a really good chance that the person who hand cut these letters and taped them onto this lined paper was Carrie from the movie Carrie. Can't say for sure, but that's definitely a possibility. So when the receptionist sees that Winslow is never to be seen, she pushes a big red button and then guards come out to toss Winslow onto the street. Winslow, determined to see Swan and discuss his music, decides to head directly to Swan's manor, called the Swanage, where he will meet Phoenix, this movie's Christine, and Swan himself.
Never thought I'd get to meet the devil.
Weird coincidence that I said the name Swan and then put that clip. I wonder if there's any connection or if that means anything in this movie that has Faust as one of its main running themes. Couldn't possibly say, not yet, nobody knows. Details are all up in the air. But before we're introduced to Phoenix and Swan, let's circle back to talk a little bit about Winslow Leach. I love Winslow. I think William Finley is perfect casting for this character, but one thing we can all see right off the bat is that his face is flawless and unmarred. So that means this is the third movie now that has opted to go with a late-in-life disfigurement for the Phantom, rather than having the disfigurement be something the Phantom was born with. As always, I will say this presents a Phantom that is fighting a different battle than the Phantom from the book. A similar battle, but not the same. There is, in Book Eric and Lon Chaney's Eric, a depth of despair that fuels his delusional yearning for Christine that's hard to replicate with a Phantom who spent most of his life just walking around as a normal guy. In the 1943 film, this take was paired with weird parental undertones that were written into the script and then removed, which caused the Phantom's obsession with Christine to feel oddly nebulous and undefined. And in the 1962 Hammer horror film, this take had all the romance removed from it, which caused the Phantom's obsession to feel oddly corporate, as he literally did not care about Christine in the slightest and only wanted her to sing his opera because she was a good fit for the role. So here we are in 1974, and we now have Winslow Leach. He is our Eric, our soon-to-be Phantom, and for the first time, I feel like this late onset dawning of the mask really actually works. And I think that's because even before anything happens to his face, we see echoes of the man he will become. The tapestry is not complete, but the image of the masked madman he will be is already taking shape on the loom. This is what I assume weaving looks like. With the big thing and you drag it down and you big thing and you drag it down. Winslow Leach shares a lot of characteristics with Book Eric. All of the Phantoms so far have been talented musicians, of course, it's a staple of the genre, but in LaRoe and Chaney's Erics, there is an arrogance with this talent, a sense of superiority, a self-assuredness that we don't see in Eric Claudan until he snaps, nor in Professor Petrie, who just was robbed. And then he hurt his face and was just sad. Like, I didn't even do anything. He didn't even do anything. Anyway, this sense of superiority, this self-assuredness, it's one of the facets that makes the Phantom of the Opera such a fascinating character, that dichotomy between his despair, deep-rooted in self-hatred, and his overwhelming ego. The way his crippling self-esteem issues are paired with his murderous superiority complex over music. Eric is absurdly, outlandishly talented, incredibly smart, dangerously clever, but because of how his appearance has informed his actions with the world and the world with him, he's taken to using these talents as armor and as weapons, holding to the belief in his mind that, aside from his skeletal face, he is better than everyone else, which is why he feels entitled to do what he does: terrorize the opera, extort the managers for money, manipulate Christine. And with Winslow, it's almost like we get a book-accurate Eric who was able to grow up and walk around as a normal guy. There's this innocence and sweetness to Winslow that is absent in Book Eric, because Book Eric never even got a kiss on his forehead from his mom. In fact, nobody ever kissed him ever until Christine gave him one kiss on his forehead, which really didn't allow any innocence or sweetness room to foster, room to flourish or grow. So Winslow has this aspect to him that Eric is denied, and that innocence and sweetness that we can see in his excitement over the prospect of selling his music to Swan, the way he willingly and trustingly hands his music to Philbin without getting any compensation or anything in writing, trusting that Swan is going to be true to his word. But there's also that pride, that ego, that self-assuredness in his own talents that we do see in Book Eric, and it's these traits that fuel a tempestuous temper and eventually lead Winslow to act as the phantom of any entertainment venue is wont to do when that trusting, innocent side of his personality is thoroughly betrayed. We left Winslow as he walked toward the Swanage, so let's pick up back there. After this jaunty little number,
Never thought I'd get to meet the devil.
that is much too short and also very Muppety, which will make sense soon, Winslow enters the Swanage and finds it full of caterwauling women. And caterwauling is really the only sound that can be used to describe the noise echoing around the foyer as Winslow climbs the stairs. The entryway is full of women who are lined up for an audition with Swan, and all of them are butchering a few lines of music that we eventually recognize as Winslow's Faust. You can see Winslow's temper rising, that superiority rearing its head as he hears his music being sung poorly by all these random women when Swan has still never met with him, until one sweet voice rises above the rest and Winslow catches sight of Phoenix. I just want to say thank you, Brian De Palma and Paul Williams, for giving me an alto Christine so I can sing her songs without shredding my vocal cords. Because even though I got dropped down to alto after my voice changed like a prepubescent boy's in 11th grade, I still insist on hitting Christine's high E. So thank you. It is nice to have something in my range. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm gonna cherish this. All my friends are gone, and I can't sleep, and just sleep alone won't ease my mind. That's Faust. I have much to say on the subject of Phoenix as Christine, but you need more context before I can say any of it, so let's keep moving along. Winslow rushes up the stairs, past the rest of the women, to where Jessica Harper as Phoenix sings in dulcet alto tones. And I can't weep.
Where'd you get that song?
Well, I got it from Philbin to audition with.
She's the only one there who seems to understand the piece she's singing, and Winslow, clearly delighted by this, coaches her through the rest of the verse.
Sing it again.
What?
Go ahead, sing it.
And I
Can't sleep. All my tears have dried. Peace and dream.
Incredible. How did you know it went like that?
I wrote the song.
He explains that he wrote the music, but still needs to speak to Swan about it, and he's not sure why Swan is...
I'm auditioning girls for my cantata. I only sing it solo.
Phoenix explains...
He's just auditioning girls for a backup chorus.
Which appeases Winslow. He feels fine about that. Let there be background singers for his starring role in his cantata as soon as he gets to Swan and talks to him about it. But he immediately follows this up by telling Phoenix...
But you're really a fine singer. You shouldn't waste your time singing in a chorus.
To which Phoenix responds...
I don't care where I sing this music.
Now, we all know that Winslow has about as much power in this situation as Phoenix does. Both of them are undiscovered musicians hoping to get their big break from Swan. But just to give you a feel for the vibe of this scene, every single person standing in line to audition is a woman. The only men in this building are the ones that work for Swan and are guiding the girls into the audition room.
Move in quietly. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And also, Winslow happens to be here.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So there's this feeling, this power dynamic of the men being in charge. And you can see this in the way women react to Winslow as he enters the Swanage. He is a man. He's walking in with confidence. So they're trying to capture his attention as they assume he must be one of these men in power. So for Phoenix, this is an incredibly exciting interaction. A good-looking, talented guy, the composer of the show she is auditioning for, just helped coach her through the music and said that she's super talented. So when he compliments her, it doesn't seem like just a compliment. It also seems like a potential stepping stone to her dreams.
Hey, look, could you help me?
At her request,
I can sing these songs better than anybody, and with your help, I'm sure I could get a part in the chorus.
Winslow promises to speak to Swan on Phoenix's behalf.
Sure, I'd love to help you.
You're not just doing this to be nice, are you?
In response, Winslow says what may be the most book Eric line to come out of a phantom's mouth since Gaston Leroux set down the pen. He says,
I would never let my personal desires influence my aesthetic judgment.
I'm sorry, if that right there doesn't capture the entire Eric, Christine, Angel of Music dynamic, then I do not know what does.
I would never let my personal desires influence my aesthetic judgment.
The Phantom's dedication to the craft is such that no matter how smitten he might be, and boy, in every universe except the Hammer Horror one, this man is smitten. He will not allow his feelings to blind him where music is concerned. The Angel of Music is very strict. Christine/Phoenix may be charming and beautiful and kind, but more than that, and outside of that, she is a talented musician like himself. Okay, hey, editing summer here. I'm hopping in because when I first wrote this script, oh, also ignore this. The clip is for volume at the roots, the curlers are for volume at the bangs. I'm inviting you into the process. We have to trust it. So welcome behind the curtain, I suppose. Anyway, I wanted to hop in because as I was writing the script, I had gotten a couple lines mixed up. I thought it went Winslow saying she was too talented for chorus, Phoenix saying, really? Phoenix asking Winslow if he would speak to Swan on her account, and then the hug. But I had forgotten the part where Phoenix says,
I don't care where I sing this music.
and I wanted to point that out because in the same way that Winslow's line
I would never let my personal desires influence my aesthetic judgment.
is one of the most book accurate lines that this character in a 70s adaptation is one of the most book accurate aspects of Winslow's character as a modern 70s phantom. This moment,
I don't care where I sing this music.
is one of Phoenix's most Christine accurate lines, because the thing about Christine is that she is a talented musician in her own right, and her passion for music, I would say, almost equals Eric's passion for music. Even though their reasoning is different and the reason they turn to music is different, the place music has in their hearts and in their lives is, I would say, it's pretty much equal. And that is the reason that Christine and the Phantom have this bond even after she discovers that the Angel of Music was not real, even after she discovers Eric's betrayal. And that bond is also why she's able to pity him, because she understands him in that way. It lets her see him as more than just the monster who betrayed her. She can't help seeing him as the man who loves music, who shares that love with her. So, what's the point I want to make? So their shared love of music is a significant part of their dynamic, and it's a lot of what humanizes the Phantom for Christine and makes him someone that she is able to pity. So we get to see just a glimpse of that with Phoenix's,
I don't care where I sing this music.
because it shows that Phoenix shares that same level of devotion to music as Winslow does. They are both talented musicians, and they both love music for the craft of it, for the art of it, not for the commercial gain of it. That is where their true bond lies. And so even though we don't get much more than this one short scene, it manages to deliver as close as it can with the time it's given, that Eric and Christine dynamic. Perfect. Next time you see me, hopefully my bangs will be dry. So that line just made me laugh out loud.
I would never let my personal desires influence my aesthetic judgment.
Especially since Phoenix responds by going,
Oh, what's that mean?
and he's like, yeah, you're good.
It means I think you're terrific.
Do you?
And she's so happy that she throws her arms about his neck, and we get this beautiful, very sweet, lingering hug. Let's get another look at this interaction. Let's really revel in it. Let's soak it in, because this is it. This is the foundation on which this house is built. There is so much to love about this movie, and Phoenix has a very interesting arc, but as with every adaptation of Phantom that has opted to take the stolen music leads to late onset facial disfigurement route, they have sacrificed the rich, complicated relationship that Christine and the Phantom have in the book by removing the Angel of Music plotline. Listen, I'm not saying this movie doesn't still have the sauce. The movie has the sauce. It captures the terror of his obsession very well. Best since Chaney, for sure. But the Paradise's Phantom and his Christine get very little screen time together. No Angel of Music, no lessons, no promises from her dead father, no manipulated bonds of trust broken by betrayal, no trips to the underground lair. This one sweet moment with the two of them is all we get. So really, just enjoy it. Because it's all downhill from here. The line starts moving, and a new group of girls, including Phoenix, is let through to the audition. Winslow gets stopped.
Oh, wait a minute. Stop. What's that, a boyfriend?
Even as he tries to explain.
I'm Winslow Leach, the
Hey,
composer.
that's great, but Swan's only seen girls today. Now, come on.
Oh, no, but I have to see him.
And Phoenix, as she's dragged down the hall, promises to...
Hey, Winslow, look, I'll tell him you're out here.
Okay, I'll wait for you.
Okay, so... remember how I mentioned the power dynamic in the Swanage, the fact that the only men in the room were men in positions of some authority, guiding the line, barring the door, saying who could audition and when, all wearing their Death Records jean jackets. And remember also how I mentioned at the beginning there were themes and content of a sexual nature and that this was a movie about rock and roll from the 1970s. Winslow watches as Phoenix is dragged down a long hallway to a short set of double doors. It's almost like that shrinking hallway scene in Willy Wonka. And when those doors swing open, there is a couch in the center of the room. A woman is lying on the couch, but she's difficult to see because of how many of those jean-jacketed men are standing around her. And as Phoenix is rushed into the room, the men grab the girl, toss her bodily back over the couch to join a bunch of other women who are standing there, and Phoenix is flung down in her place. And as the doors start to swing closed again, we see Philbin, wearing nothing but boxers below the belt, climb on top of her as she starts to scream. Moments later, the doors fling back open and a weeping Phoenix is rushed out of the room, stating,
Philbin tried. I just can't do it, not that way. I came here to sing.
This is the film's first and only reference to the casting couch specifically, but it will not be the last time the film touches on this topic. In fact, this theme of violence towards women is an almost subtle through line throughout the film. Now, I don't think subtle is the right word. It's a frequent recurring theme, but it's almost like when Winslow was setting up his piano at the beginning of the film. You can see what's going on, but it's not the focus of the story. It's just there in the background. Phantom of the Paradise was written by Brian De Palma to be a scathing indictment of the music industry, of which the casting couch is an aspect, trading sexual favors or being coerced into sexual favors for career advancement. So the film takes an almost cavalier approach to the topic, as this kind of stuff had been happening since the first days of Hollywood. So of course this is what was going to be going on behind closed doors. Of course this is what the rich and powerful Swan would do. How else would you show a corrupt industry without highlighting this aspect of the corruption? It's presented on screen as a matter of course, rather than given much weight. So it's there for a purpose. It's clearly part of this commentary on the music industry, but it's not the focus of Phantom of the Paradise. Paradise. This is an expose on how women were treated in the Fame Machine. Winslow, for example, who already clearly admires Phoenix, watched this whole thing take place, and he doesn't even really try to help her. As she runs away crying, he calls after her.
Leave me alone! I'm sorry, did you tell him who I am? What's your name?
Oof, brother, gosh. So what happens first is that Winslow gets tossed out of the Swanage, but not before he asks two of the jean-jacketed henchmen,
Do you guys know where a good department store is?
and Philbin's lackeys are like,
Yeah, we'll take it. We'll go right
what a silly and strange question to ask, and how easy to dismiss that strange question when the next thing we see is a giant circle bed covered in silk sheets and women in negligees. As the camera pans towards the women, you catch snatches of their conversation. One girl asks when they'll be allowed to sing, and another responds,
I've been here 12 times and I still don't get to sing.
what they're doing now is performing for Swan, who is watching through one of his Swan Song cameras. You can see a little bit of the logo, but it's partially cut off enough that it survived the cut, and also it was integral to the scene. So the big panning shot we're in zooms closer to the bed, moving in to focus on one woman in a long-sleeved dress who is facing away from the camera and like clutching her purse, until this woman falls backwards and we say it's not a woman at all, it's Winslow.
You remember me, I'm Winslow Leach.
Winslow, what are you doing here? Now, I think there are two ways to interpret this scene. Way number one, the way that I initially interpreted it, was that Winslow asked about the department store as a ruse to make it seem like he just walked into the Swanage because he was a guy who needed directions, and the henchmen threw him in a dress and then onto the silken bed as like a hazing thing. Way number two, the much more logical and obvious reason that I realized when I used my thinking brain for 2 seconds is that Winslow saw the casting couch, saw what they tried to do to Phoenix, and realized if he dressed as a woman, he could sneak in and finally see Swan. And this is a good example of both what I mean when I said the film has a cavalier, casual attitude towards the theme of the casting couch and sexual exploitation. You've got a bed full of writhing women, all there in hopes of catching their big break, while one of them says she's been there 12 times and has still never gotten that break, and the aspects of Winslow's character that lead him to becoming the Phantom. In terms of Winslow, the fact that he was inspired to get a dress and try to sneak in as one of Swan's women because of what he saw happen to Phoenix just highlights that ego, that superiority complex about his music. His needs and desires have the highest priority, and that is very aligned with Book Eric. You don't emotionally manipulate, kidnap, and try to force a soprano into matrimony unless you've gotten it into your head that your wants are more important than hers. Winslow may be out and about existing in the world with a flawless, unmarred face that's allowed him to maintain an innocent outlook on the world and a sense of whimsy, for now, but the framework needed to haunt a theater and just like covet a singing girl, oh, that scaffolding is built right into him. That's a foundation of who he is. Just one more cog in this horrible machine, in this corrupt industry. Speaking of corruption, this is when we meet Swan. So, one of the mirrored panels in the wall pops open, and Swan, in a whirl of smoke, appears wearing flame-colored silk pajamas.
Never thought I'd get to meet the devil.
I'm not saying anything yet. Okay, so, a couple things to go over. First, Swan is played by Paul Williams, a very famous musician and composer who has a long history of working with the Muppets and the Jim Henson Company. This is the man who wrote Rainbow Connection, and that's why I love how Muppety the
Never thought I'd get to meet the devil
sounds. But Paul Williams didn't just play Swan in the film, he is responsible for the entire soundtrack, and it's a banger soundtrack. Every single song in this movie is just a masterful use of music as a storytelling tool. These songs are layered with meaning and laced with foreshadowing on top of just being good music. If you have not listened to the Phantom of the Paradise soundtrack, I highly recommend you go and do so. Brian De Palma actually almost cast Paul Williams as the Phantom. Now, he'd written the role with William Finley in mind, but was so impressed by Paul Williams, he'd offered Paul Williams the role, but Paul Williams didn't feel he was sinister enough to play the Phantom, so he declined the role and ended up being cast as Swan with William Finley as Winslow. And I think it's perfect casting. I think everybody ended up with the roles they should have had. Paul Williams has this charm and air of youthful innocence that, yes, in the role of Winslow would have been devastating to see crushed and twisted into the Phantom's dark nature, but as Swan, that charm and air of youthful innocence is what makes Swan so sinister. He's disarming, never angry, smooth talking, and manipulative. Paul Williams plays the role perfectly. So, Swan emerges from behind the mirror, and oh, one-way mirror, and the angel who gave lessons behind it, you may be gone, but your echoes haunt this narrative. Then all the women reach for him, cooing, calling his name. It's very, shake your dress!
Ladies, come on!
Meanwhile, Winslow is just looking up at him like this, and is then like, hey Swan, it's me, Winslow Leach. As I'm sure you might have guessed, Swan promptly kicks Winslow out of the room and out of the Swanage entirely.
And you're a distant girl, like a Tana. I'm Winslow Leach, I wrote it!
But before he turns his attention to the
ladies,
he takes the time to make a single phone call. A few minutes ago, I was lightly lamenting the lack of screen time we have in this movie between Winslow and Phoenix, and the fact that the Angel of Music aspect was missing from this retelling. But here's the thing. Even with the Angel of Music plotline getting axed, there's a logic to Winslow's obsession with Phoenix. Their sweet, sort of love at first sight, beginning of a beautiful friendship, bonding moment is the last good thing that happens to Winslow Leach. We cut to Winslow, beat up and bleeding after being tossed out of the Swanage, still wearing his dress, still carrying his little purse, when two cops show up who are clearly on Swan's payroll. One says,
"Hey Jack, what's that he got in his purse?"
while Winslow's bag is closed and partially tucked underneath him, and the other pulls out a little baggie of drugs and says,
"Mr. Swan said he had it on him." "What do you know? Smack, Jack."
I love the editing in this scene. The clip might be too long to include all in one go, so I might split it up. But what happens is the cop planting drugs asks,
"You know what you could get for pushing in this state?"
Then there is an immediate hard cut to a judge with a big old gavel and a giant American flag going, "Life!" And then Winslow turns around and screams,
"But I'm innocent! Swan stole my music and framed me!"
Then we hard cut to Sing Sing prison, where Winslow volunteers, or is volunteered, to participate in an experimental dental treatment generously provided by the Swan Foundation, the non-profit arm of Swan Song Enterprises, where, in an effort to prevent disease, they rip all the teeth out of your head and give you a healthy pair of silver dentures instead. Cut again to several months later, we see Winslow Leach on the prison assembly line helping to make Tiddlywinks toys with the rest of the prisoners. His long, fluffy hair is shorn, he's got big silver chompers, and he is the only inmate in white. His jumpsuit, or maybe it's his hat, some aspect of his garb, is emblazoned with a label saying something like Swan Foundation Volunteer. So he is in jail because Swan framed him. He has no teeth because Swan had them ripped out. And he is now forced to wear Swan's name on his prison attire. He's been brought pretty low, but he hasn't quite lost it yet. No, that happens mere moments later when the radio announces Swan's latest musical endeavor.
So let's hear it again. The Juicy Fruit singing Swan's Faust.
And that is when Winslow loses his ever-loving mind. He beats one of the guards, he jumps into a cardboard box and rides it right into the shipping truck, which drives away, and then he falls out of the shipping truck, perfectly taped into the box, on the steps of Swan Song Enterprises. This time, there's no waiting for the receptionist. He barges his way in, guards chasing him all away, Swan's big, giant gold record desk spinning over in the corner, plexiglass windows falling to the wayside as he makes his way to the record press. There's boxes upon boxes of records printed, the hated Juicy Fruit singing his stolen cantata, so he's throwing boxes and knocking down stacks, and that's when he sees his goal, the record press, where he can destroy the prints at their source. So Winslow goes to the record press. He takes out a comically large bundle of dynamite that he got who knows where, and is all set and ready to blow the record press up when he gets startled by a guard. His sleeve gets caught in the machine and the record press turns on.
Hey, get away from that record press!
And he falls head first into the record press. Fun fact, this was a real record press that was really on, like actually moving. It had been fitted with some like cushioning, like a fake rubber version of the press that would be safe to squish William Finley's head between for the shot. And the actual metal press beneath the cushion was supposedly set in such a way that it would stop before completely closing. But whatever safety measures had been put in place failed, and the press came full speed and full strength toward William Finley's head, and if they hadn't pulled him out as quickly as they did, there could have been a very serious accident on set. Hard cut to a bleeding Winslow running through the night. In one of the outtakes that was in the Swan archives, there's a longer shot of this scene where you get to see his face, you see the guard shoot him, but in the actual movie, it cuts directly from the press and him like, "Rah!" and then him stumbling through a parking lot. White jumpsuit covered in blood, face still smoking from the heat of the press as he makes this horrible keening sound before throwing himself into the East River. Ah yes, what can I say? Another staple of the stolen music plot. Our guy is gonna get his music stolen, and then he's gonna get a facial wound, and he's gonna throw himself into a body of water about it. Are you okay, Binkus? Anyway, time passes. We get a spinning newspaper cutscene that lets us know that Swan is about to premiere Faust at the opening of the Paradise, with a little article that shows Winslow Leach is considered dead. And the story picks back up with another scene where we are seeing through the eyes of one of the characters. When we were seeing through Swan's point of view, we saw the world through a position of steady power. Now, when we see the world through the eyes of the wounded Winslow Leach, we see the world from a different position of power, the power of fear. The camera, and we the audience along with it, lumbers towards some workers that are putting posters up outside the Paradise.
Okay, let's move this ladder. What's that?
Then it pivots toward an alleyway guarded by two of the jean-jacketed thugs.
Then he really gets mad at me, you know?
Before sneakily making its way through the backstage door. From the stage, just out of sight, we hear,
Harold, you leave her alone.
Just another casual swipe at that theme of the exploitation of women, and then the camera, we, Winslow, are sneaking into the costume room, where we find an all-leather jumpsuit and a one-eyed silver bird mask. Oh, and baby, it's on. And I would just like to point out, perhaps not intentional, but present nonetheless, we've got a nice callback to the Hammer horror phantom with the one-eyed mask. Now that he has the costume, we can assume he's gonna go get dressed or something, because the camera cuts away from Winslow's point of view, and instead we're now with the Beach Bums, formerly the Juicy Fruits, but now dressed in swim trunks and tank tops, who are on stage getting ready to rehearse. This scene opens from further back in the theater. We're looking at the stage from a little bit far away. In the foreground, we can see several rows of seats and a man and woman standing in one of the aisles, silhouetted by the lights as they chat. The director calls for rehearsal to start, and the two run to the stage, the guy to his place in the band, the girl to her spot with the dancers, and as they run, the screen splits. On the right side, we follow the Beach Bums and their performance on stage as they start to sing Upholstery, which is the third song on the soundtrack. And on the left-hand side, we see a pair of leather-gloved hands start a timer on a bundle of dynamite and then hide it in the trunk of a prop car that's about to be wheeled on stage. There's a lot of visual and audio information coming at you from both sides of the screen, a lot of things happening simultaneously. Over here on the right side, the camera focuses mostly on the stage, on the Beach Bums performance, front-facing, what the audience should be seeing. But over here on the left, there's more of a sense of movement. more dialogue, the hidden backstage world. To give you a sense of this experience, I'm going to keep running through the plot synopsis over here as we've been doing some of the more surface level stuff, what the audience should be seeing. While over here, I'm going to dig a little more into those deeper themes. So like I said, on the right side, we're getting a full performance of the Beach Bum song Upholstery. Brian De Palma was inspired to write Phantom of the Paradise when he heard a Beatles song turned into elevator music and realized that even beautiful things could be ruined by being commodified. The song starts with the lead singer saying,
Carburetors, man. That's what life is all about.
But as the song continues, you realize that this is Winslow's song, the one we heard him playing at the beginning of the movie. This is his Faust. So along this theme of the commodification of art, there's this through line from the catalyst to the finale where Swan wants Winslow's music, but the moment he has it, he tries to change it. Almost unrecognizably altered. Winslow's original song was a powerful ballad about a man who'd lost his love and was yearning for peace and rest. And now the Beach Bums are singing a bright, bubbly beach song about a guy who really loves his car and his lady. Let's compare the lyrics. So you've got the pure version of Winslow's artistic vision that Swan clearly sees and values for its perfection and beauty, and Swan has issues with perfection that I'm going to highlight in just a little bit. But anytime Swan has access to Winslow's music, he destroys it by trying to make a more marketable version. And Swan's not wrong, he's good at what he does. His versions are catchy and fun, but they're robbed of their meaning. Just look at how Upholstery compares to Faust. For the majority of the split screen scene, the right-hand side is pretty much just a music video for Upholstery. But on the left-hand side, we've been following the car as it's wheeled around backstage. With Faust, you've got this rich, moving ballad that is layered with meaning, both within the story as it's a modern adaptation of a classic opera, and in the meta-narrative for the character arc it foreshadows for Winslow. We get more of Philbin being a creep, telling one of the swimsuit-clad girls she's not allowed to cover up backstage. Meanwhile, the Beach Bums are singing about a car, upholstery, material things. Sure, both songs start with I was not myself last night, but that's where the similarities end. The girls climb on top of the prop car. Right then, one of the Beach Bums tries to run off stage. He tells Philbin he feels like something bad is gonna happen and asks, can't you hear the ticking? To be profitable, to be marketable, Swan robbed Winslow's music of its soul. I think we can all see where this is leading and makes him climb into the car as it rolls on stage. We can now see the car on both sides of the screen, but as on the left, the camera zooms in closer and closer on the trunk and the ticking coming from within it. Meanwhile, on the right, the camera finally pivots away from the stage and up to a high corner of the empty theater, where, looming above the Black Swan logo is Winslow, who is, metaphorically, symbolically, and visually looking down on Swan. For this one brief glimmering moment, Winslow is the one with the power. This alteration the right camera swings back to Swan, who sees Winslow just as the left camera closes in on the license plate right by now the ticking car goes boom. And Swan realizes he has a problem on his hands. For once, someone has surprised Swan. He wanders through the gorgeous halls of the paradise, meditating on this issue before slipping into a secret door behind the mirror. I say again, Angel of Music, they may take you out of this story, but they will never take your mirrors. Where he reviews the footage of the explosion and confirms it's Winslow who wreaked this havoc. Two things I want to mention. One, when the secret mirror door swings closed, Winslow is just standing there menacingly. So far, he has had fantastic luck just walking and standing in full view of everyone simply because they are all always looking the other way. And two, Swan takes the time to change into his watching my secret evil movies outfit in his evil secret movie viewing room. Because he's suddenly in a red and black suit in this shot, but he walked into the room wearing tan. Just a standard continuity error, probably caused by reusing a clip from later in the film, but I like to think that Swan just has a special villainous suit hung up in the Swan archives so that he's always dressed according to the theme. That theme being,
never thought I'd get to meet the devil.
Ladies.
So after he reviews the footage, Swan changes back into his casual outerwear, opens the secret mirror, and boom, who's there? Winslow with... No! But Swan is back in control. He'd simply been unaware that Winslow's piece was still on the board, but now he knows exactly how to play this game.
Why, Winslow, good to see you. Been looking for you everywhere.
Swan then rips Winslow's mask off of his face, forces him to look in the mirror, tells him he's horrible.
God, you're horrible.
And Winslow can't respond because in addition to what happened to his face, the record press accident also cost him his voice. The only sounds he can make now is that same animalistic keening he made as he threw himself in the river.
Look at yourself. Look at yourself. You've destroyed your face, your voice. Now you're trying to destroy the paradise. Haven't we all had enough?
One thing I'd like to call out and appreciate is Winslow's steady hand and dedication to an extreme cat eye, even in these trying times. But despite the sharpness of his winged liner, he still manages to be manipulated by Swan into trusting him.
I can give you the power to create again. I can make you somebody. We're going to have to start all over again, Winslow. Only this time, working together instead of against each other. Time for your sound is now. People are going to want to hear your music. Tomorrow I'll put a whole new group together who'll do your songs your way. Trust me! Trust me.
And the next thing we know, we're at auditions again with a row of girls lined up on stage, and both Winslow and Swan are watching from the shadows of Swan's preferred box seat. Now, is this a very subtle reference to box 5, perhaps? And as I've been writing this script and making this video, I'm realizing Swan himself has a lot of parallels to the Phantom of the Opera. His talent with music, the fact that he's always coming out from behind mirrors, his manipulation of people. It's like, who is the monster and who is the man? Sing the bells of Notre Dame. And it is here at these auditions that we are once more reunited with Phoenix. Yay!
What's your name, sweetheart?
Phoenix.
She comes on stage in a hat, perhaps to make her less obvious as the girl who wouldn't play along during the last auditions. And when she gets to Philbin, she says,
Do I get to sing this time?
To which Philbin responds,
We're not looking for singers, we're looking for screamers.
Which is 100% a dig on the fact that Phoenix was the only woman who put up a fight. One of the saddest aspects of the casting couch scene to me is the fact that you can actually see a line of women standing behind the couch and laughing as Phoenix is thrown upon it. So Phoenix turns to leave, like she said when she fled the room.
I just can't do enough that way. I came here to sing.
But Swan, knowing he's got something here that Winslow wants, stops her and asks her,
What would you give me to sing?
To which Phoenix responds,
Anything you wanted.
Anything?
Never thought I'd get to meet the devil.
Would you give me your voice?
Try me.
And it's now time for the 4th song in the soundtrack, Special to Me, Phoenix's audition song. I love this song. This is my 2nd favorite song in the movie. I love it. It's in my range.
Caught up in your wheeling, dealing.
You've got no time left for simple feeling.
I thought I knew you, but I didn't know you at all.
She crushes it. She's an alto. It's great to hear and fun to sing. Do 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 do. And honestly, I think in the trivia section, I'm going to do a little mini breakdown of all the fantastic foreshadowing and meaning layered into each of these songs. Because who could have guessed Phoenix singing a song about the dangers of fame with lyrics like
Until your pipe dreams become obsessions
and
seems like some kind of spell you're under.
And not being sure about
where we go once we arrive
has some bearing on her character's journey. Swan, satisfied with both Phoenix's stellar performance and the fact that he can still use her to manipulate Winslow, says,
She's good, isn't she?
you go once you arrive.
Then let's talk.
Phoenix ends her song by dancing herself all the way off the stage. And excitedly runs back to hear what Swan has to say, only to find that he's gone. Okay, so one of the things that Swan promised was that he could give Winslow his voice back, and the next manipulative token of trust that Swan gives the man from whom he stole music, freedom, and all of his teeth is just that. his voice. The next scene opens in this crazy looking recording booth where Winslow sings his Faust in his ruined voice, while Swan adjusts various dials and effects.
Filters, doobies.
I can feel the hunger growing.
This recording booth is not, in fact, just set dressing, but is actually a fully functioning sound booth that is currently kept at Canada's National Music Centre that people can still use to make music today. The booth is, and I'm so sorry, I'm about to read a whole bunch of words that I, as someone who has produced zero music aside from the theme song for my Phantom of the Opera web series, The Private Letters of Christine Daae, that I made using the GarageBand app and playing a bunch of the violin strings at the same time and hoping for the best. I don't understand these words at all, but for those of you who do know something about music production, the booth is called TONTO, which stands for the Original New Timbral Orchestra, and, quoting directly from the Swan archives here, is the world's first multi-timbral polyphonic analog synthesizer, and was designed and built by a pair of Grammy-winning musician/engineer/producer/sound designers, Malcolm Cecil and Robert Margouleff. It's a Series 3 Moog modular synthesizer, which Cecil expanded with modules from Moog, ARP, Oberheim, and others. It was used by Stevie Wonder on several albums and is also heard on records by Quincy Jones, Bobby Womack, the Isley Brothers, Gil Scott-Heron and the Weather Report, Stephen Stills, the Doobie Brothers,
Smoking doobies with my brothers,
Dave Mason, Little Feat, and Joan Baez. All those dials and jacks on the wall are actually part of the thing and not some set designer's fantasy. So it's really cool, and it's a big thing that people actually use. So that's for all you music producers out there. That's for you, baby. Go look up Tonto. It exists. They have some of its music on Spotify. I listened to some songs. It's very ethereal. It's very... Anyway, so once Swan perfects Winslow's filtered singing voice... Fun fact, one of the songs on the soundtrack is Paul Williams singing Faust instead of William Finley, and that's the version of the song we hear when Swan says, "Perfect." He enters the recording studio and gives Winslow a portable synthesizer, or maybe like a voice modulator, or perhaps it's just an amp. It's a little box that he can wear that modulates his speaking voice as well. And Swan tests out various settings while it's kind of like a mic check, 1, 2, 3, but instead of saying mic check 1, 2, 3, Winslow keeps saying until they land on something passable. Swan tells Winslow,
Well, at least you can talk with this. You can plug yourself into the console for singing.
but he's done it. He made good on his word. Swan gave Winslow his voice back. And now that Swan has shown Winslow that he can provide what he promises, he next offers up Phoenix. As I mentioned earlier, there is a logic to Winslow's obsession with Phoenix that makes sense, that gives it that extra creepy sauce with a side of fries that's served in the book, but is missing from the 1943 and 1962 adaptations. In the book, Eric, the Phantom, having spent his entire life enduring the world's abuse or isolating himself from it, hangs all his hopes for happiness on Christine Daae. Whatever chord she struck within him, her talent, her beauty, her kindness, a combination of all three, he decides that, no matter the method or the consequences, she will be the means of making him normal, giving him a life like that of any other man where he can go for a walk in the park with his wife on Sundays. It's diabolical, criminal, and inexcusable behavior, but the motive behind it, the loneliness made bitter, the hurt turned into rage, causes his interactions with and attitude towards Christine to elicit in the reader this perfectly balanced blend of sympathy and horror. That's the sauce. A well-balanced Phantom is really gonna creep you out, but boy, if you don't still feel bad for the guy. Winslow Leach, though he got to grow up as a normal guy, unlike Eric, has that balance. As I said earlier, his one brief but lovely interaction with Phoenix is the last good thing that happens to him. They bonded. He heard her talent as she sang his music. One love that can sing my song. He saw her bravery in fighting against the casting couch and therefore losing any advantage it may have offered. And then immediately after this lovely, hopeful interaction, He is rejected by Swan, beaten, thrown into the street, framed for a crime he didn't commit, has all his teeth ripped out, his face crushed, and his voice destroyed, and on top of everything else, Swan is passing Winslow's music off as his own. And now, after all this time and trouble, he sees Phoenix again, hears her sing again, sees her fighting to succeed with her talent rather than bend to a corrupt system again. She's everything he wants.
Would stand by me.
And also everything he can no longer be. And so he latches onto this all-consuming idea of just like Eric with Christine, and hangs all of his hopes on her, saying,
She could be my voice now.
To which Swan wholeheartedly agrees.
I want you to stop terrorizing the paradise and rewrite your cantata for Phoenix.
And I would actually consider this, Winslow's desire to have Phoenix serve as his voice, as the film's closest allusion to the Angel of Music plotline in the book, but as a sort of inversion of it. In the book, in the times when Christine honestly believed she was taking lessons with the Angel of Music, she constantly referred to the angel as the voice. The voice was Eric's greatest act of manipulation. It was how he preyed on Christine's grief over the loss of her father to forge a bond between them. It was how he isolated her from others as he forbid her from speaking of her lessons to anyone other than Mama Valerius. And it was how he got Christine to trust him enough to follow him through the mirror. Eric's goals were always selfish. He wanted Christine near him. He wanted her love, her kindness, her beauty for himself because it was what he figured he was owed after so many years of pain. And yes, we can feel bad for him in that. It is sad. People should be nice to each other. But that doesn't mean that you can force someone into marrying you against their will. No. People can't fix people. Only Jesus can fix people. Sorry, I have to say that again. That's just that I have to say it. Coveted her as a possession. Even at his most altruistic, giving her free lessons to help her with her career was selfish because it would simply mean that her talents were an extension of his, as it would be his training that made her a star. And he did all of this as the voice, with his voice, his unearthly talent. So now, flipping it on its head, we have Winslow Leach, a phantom with no voice at all, but he still yearns for Phoenix, her talent, her beauty, her strength, in a way that parallels the phantom's obsessive love for Christine. Winslow was always a one-man show. He wrote his Faust and he wanted to sing his Faust. It's why he was so offended by the idea of the soulless corporate Juicy Fruits singing his music, and annoyed when Swan was Swan's refusal to see Winslow wasn't just denying Winslow the recognition of his talents as a composer, it was also denying him the opportunity to perform his art according to his artistic vision. And now that Winslow's been stripped of his talents, now that he's forced to hide his face, now that he's no longer able to sing unless he's plugged into Swan's machine, all his dreams are gone, aside from one, the distant star that was the brief, beautiful beginning he and Phoenix shared. And so now, that's all he has. He wants her, he wants Phoenix, but he also wants to absorb her talent and beauty to replace what was taken from him.
She could be my voice now.
If he cannot shine, he'll make sure she can, no matter the method or the consequences. It's just a really interesting twist on the concept of the voice from the novel. What do you do with a phantom who can't sing? Even as it maintains that obsession and desire to possess that is 100% about the phantom's wants and not in Christine or Phoenix's best interests at all, even if their careers do briefly benefit before everything descends into fire and blood. Okay, so that's what's on the table. Swan is offering Winslow a chance to speak again, to sing again, and to have Winslow's music, under Winslow's name, open the paradise, this time composed specifically for Phoenix. He and Swan will be partners, and all Winslow has to do is sign.
Here's a contract.
Now, eagle-eyed viewers may have picked up on some subtle clues I've been laying out in this plot synopsis pertaining to a surprising secret about Swan.
Never thought I'd get to meet the devil.
Ladies!
And with this next bit, I'm going to tie all those threads together. With the same cartoon physics with which Winslow produced a bundle of dynamite to blow up the record press, Swan produces this contract.
Everything I've said and more is in it.
Gaze upon its complicated language.
Party of the first part gives the party of the second part full power to do with him at their pleasure, to send, to fetch, or carry him or his. What does that mean?
Gaze upon the way Swan dismisses Winslow's questions.
Oh, that's a transportation clause.
And finally, gaze upon the way they sign their names in blood.
But you best play what I write.
Ink isn't worth anything to me, Winslow.
One of the taglines for this movie is "He sold his soul for rock and roll." And that's exactly what Winslow just did.
And now we're in business. Together. Forever.
So, Winslow has 7 days to rewrite his cantata for Phoenix.
My cantata. For her.
Swan leaves Winslow to his work and makes his way back to his secret viewing room behind the mirror. This time, no need to change because he's already wearing his "Watching My Secret Evil Movies" outfit. And as he watches his Secret Evil movies and reviews the dirty deed just done, not dirt cheap, but for the high, high price of Winslow's soul, we hear the sound of his true voice.
"Yes, Winslow, sign, sign."
Ink isn't worth anything to me, Winslow. Now sign.
What follows is a truly inspired montage underscored by the 5th song on the soundtrack called Phantom's Theme, Beauty and the Beast. And I think you already know that this bad boy is rife with meaning. A song about a man struggling to understand himself and all the
good guys and the bad guys that I've been.
A war between the
devils that disturb me and the angels that
defeated them somehow. The thoughts of a man who just signed a very dubious contract with another man he does not trust.
come together in midnight.
Tasty, Winslow. Tasty.
Meanwhile, on the screen, you've got this fabulous montage. Phoenix slowly zooming back into the ether, the Phantom hard at work, writing the pages of his cantata, stacking up, music notes floating through the air, pages of a calendar flipping as the days passed, and a candle burning down into a nub. Now, according to my research, this scene was both directed and edited by Paul Hirsch, the editor for the film, and it was originally going to include a clip where one of the Swan song cameras floats by and looks at the audience before spinning away, but it was chopped in the big cut. So while Winslow works steadfastly on his masterpiece for Phoenix, Swan prepares for the opening of the Paradise. He stops in to check on Winslow every now and then to pick up pages, give notes.
Come together in midnight.
Tasty, Winslow. Tasty.
Let Winslow know what day it is.
Thursday. Today is Thursday.
Tell him how excited Phoenix is about the music.
Phoenix is doing beautifully. Can't wait to meet you, by the way.
Even though he's a liar. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. And to bring him
breakfast. Pick me up.
But outside of the secret room he has Winslow tucked away in, Swan is breaking almost every promise he made to Winslow. First, Phoenix is out, relegated to the chorus. Why?
She's perfect. But you know how I abhor perfection in anyone but myself.
And Swan is still taking Winslow's gorgeous music and butchering it. This scene, more than any other, highlights the movie's main critique on the commodification of art. When I first watched Phantom of the Paradise, I kept being like, what is Swan doing? If the music is so
tasty, Winslow, tasty,
then why does he keep trying to change it? But then, 30 seconds into an interview with Brian De Palma that I found as a special feature on my copy of the movie, he was like, yeah, so in accordance to the theme, I just had Swan keep messing with Winslow's music. And I was like, good. Yeah, I was picking up exactly what you were putting down. Good for me for noticing the big old giant biggest obvious plot point in the world. Way to go, Summer. Congratulations on your eyes. No need to take you to the eye doctor. It's just another example of how well layered the script is. You've got the overarching theme of the commodification of art that's obviously inspiring Swan's character and role in the story as art commodifier. But the internal narrative is also super interesting. When Swan first hears Winslow's music, he says, that music, it's perfect. I'm pretty sure he says perfect. And if he doesn't, darn.
I wasn't using my eyes or my ears.
He doesn't so much say it in words, but it's like, it's the sentiment of the moment. He's like, wait, that music, that's what I'm opening the paradise with. And then you infer from that it's because it's perfect. And now we've got him admitting that Phoenix is also perfect. So he can see and appreciate and value the beauty and artistry of what Winslow and Phoenix are capable of, but he hates it because it's not his. And so he takes it, Winslow's music, stealing it outright and then later by contract, and Phoenix's opportunity to shine, and then distorts them, altering Winslow's music into something unrecognizable and hiding Phoenix in the background where he can still use her to manipulate Winslow, but not let her organic, inherent talents outshine his manufactured perfection. And now that I'm saying all of this, just now as I'm sitting here and saying all this, who does this sound like? What did I just say about absorbing people's talents and wanting them for your own and wanting them to be an extension of a thing? There's more parallels with Swan as the Phantom too, and his name was going to be Spectre, and Spectre is a type of phantom, and that is both a type of ghost, like the opera ghost. Does this movie have two phantoms? I don't even think I have time or the wherewithal or the bandwidth or the energy to try and figure out if this is a Phantom of the Opera where there are two phantoms. Oh my gosh, are they split in half? Are they two facets of the same coin? Are they two sides of one character? I don't have time to think about that right now. So, Swan is sitting in a giant desk shaped as a gold record, which is fantastic and visually stunning, and I love it, and I love this movie. It is so cool to look at and so cool to watch and see. Like I said, so, Swan, gold record desk. And after telling Philbin to put Phoenix in the chorus, he tries to find a replacement sound with which to alter Winslow's cantata. And it's a really cool scene. Swan is alone at this big, shining gold desk in a sea of shadows, only Philbin off to the side, kind of clinging to this little island of light. But as he starts his search for another sound to alter and enhance the sound he already likes, he turns in place. He's on like a swiveling chair, so he's spinning like this around his desk. And as he does so, musical acts start popping out of the darkness, one after another. And all of them are singing the same lyrics to the song we've just heard in the montage of Winslow composing, the Phantom's theme, Beauty and the Beast. We hear those lyrics again and again in different musical styles.
Half asleep, I hear a voice, I hear a voice, I hear a voice. Or is there someone calling me?
To work it out, I let them in.
Then somehow.
And in this scene, it's all done practically. Like, this wasn't layered filming. They didn't get separate takes. I just realized I said layered filming as if that means anything at all, and also that there were no separate takes. Let's start with separate takes. Yeah, I think there probably were some separate takes. It's very well edited to look like one long continuous shot, and I hope it is. I hope they did that. I hope they timed everything out and they got the perfect shot, because that would be really cool. But if you look at some of the people moving through the background that give it this really great sense of motion, you'll see that there are points where the people will go behind like a curtain, and it looks almost like they're walking into just like blackness, because it's dark curtains in a pitch black room. What else is it gonna look like? Sorry, I'm very sleepy right now. I was awoken at 5:30 this morning from a dark nightmare that scared me so bad, but had such a fantastic plot and story arc that I had a narrator in my dream. Like, a monster was barging through my door to eat me, and my hand was on the lock. I was almost at the point where I was going to flip the deadbolt and be safe, and then a narrator went, "But it was too late. You knew that all along, didn't you?" And then I got, like, sucked up by this horrible forest monster, and then my brain hard cut immediately to overhead shot of like an empty forest road, and then I could hear my own voice going, "Thank you. I would like to just I would just like to thank everybody who helped me with this project. This has been just a labor of love," as I desperately, like, in my own head, I started giving like a director's speech, as if I was at a Q&A screening of the movie I'd just made up in my own mind, because I wanted to change the subject. I was scared that if I opened my eyes, the horrible forest monster was going to be standing over my bed. So I started thanking the Academy in my brain. My dream had a narrator. I'm very sleepy. Anyway, I think that there are separate takes in that shot. I think that if you watch it, you can probably notice where there are some subtle cuts, but it's very well done. Layered filming. Let's talk about what I meant by that. I simply mean that everybody was in the room together. Everybody was there in the same spot. Swan was in his little swivel chair. The people were standing in the dark. The lights were coming on. The sound guy was sneaking by with his microphone. And they weren't doing anything like... Have you ever seen Labyrinth? You know Chilly Down, the song with the fireys, where it's a bunch of the, like, puppets who keep taking their heads off, and they're like, chilly down with the bog heads. Do with the bog heads. Come on. That one... They used a black screen for that. So that was like the predecessor to the green screen, where it was just a big black screen, and then they had Sarah, they had Jennifer Connelly, they had the fire, they had the puppet masters also wearing black, and then they cut everything off of the black screen and they put the forest behind it. However they did that at that time, that's not what happened here. They didn't have layered footage. That's what I meant by that. They didn't like film the band first and then superimpose Swan spinning in his chair. Everybody was just in the same room together as a happy Death Records family, saying, half asleep, I hear a voice, So, yeah. It was like all of the musical acts were just waiting in the shadows until the light would hit them, and then the sound guy was just crawling blindly under the table with his boom mic to catch the audio as the camera panned. It's just a really cool, effective scene, both visually and in terms of the narrative. It really highlights that the story and intent behind Winslow's compositions mean nothing to Swan, each genre altering the mood of the ballad into something incongruent with the lyrics. Finally, after rejecting act after act after act, the lights come up on a man dressed in shimmering gold with gold dust in his hair, singing, "Come together in me now." Swan pauses, considers, and says,
"There's something he'll like."
And that is when we meet
Beef.
So I'm beef now. I'm gonna be beef for a bit, if that's okay with you. I hope we don't have beef, because no. So, after the scene at Swan's gold record desk, we cut to an airport tarmac where we get a few more examples of the Swan song cut. You know, the big legal cut. The Led Zeppelin issue. Swan is holding a press conference on the airport's tarmac. You can see the original Swan Song Enterprises logo across the podium. My guess is that they assumed it was going to be too far away to be legible, but honestly, who can say? Probably Paul Hirsch, the editor, but he's not here right now. Only I'm here. Only me dressed as beef. That's who's here with you in this moment. As we get closer, we can see the podium in front of him is now covered up with a very obvious masking job. Though I will say, when I first watched the movie, there's so much going on in general that I did not clock this weird masking job at all. But now that I've done a little research, now that I know to look, yeah, it's really obviously just like a bright white box with the Death Records logo on it, just floating above the podium. Like, here's the podium. It's just here. It's on a different plane of existence. On the little platform with Swan and his podium is a big upright coffin. Swan is announcing the opening of the Paradise. It's made clear that no photos of Swan are allowed to be taken except by his own cameras for the Swan Song archive.
How come they get to shoot Swan and we don't even get to take any pictures of him? Because they've got exclusive rights to his life.
Swan tells the audience that he will be opening the Paradise with a new rock opera.
It was written by the late Winslow Leach,
a modern retelling of Faust where
a young man sells his soul to the devil to become a pop star.
And he tells them that it was composed by the late Winslow Leach. So hey, credit where credit is due, both because Winslow got credit for his music, and also while Swan has, as expected, twisted every other promise he made to that poor man in the bird mask into something that serves his own needs, he did credit him as composer, which is nice for Winslow. One of the reporters asks if the Juicy Fruits will be performing in Faust, and Swan says no. It will be performed by the future, Beef, or whatever he says there.
Gentlemen, I give you the future. Beef.
One thing to note, the Beach Bums nay Juicy Fruits are there. They're all wearing bandages and neck braces from Winslow's prop car bomb, but they're the ones to open the coffin to reveal Beef. And from this point on, they're going to be called the Undeads. And this is never actually stated in the film with dialogue. It's only at the end credits that you see the same three actors are credited as the Juicy Fruits, the Beach Bums, and the Undeads. In an article called A Look Back at Brian De Palma's The Phantom of the Paradise by Philip Auslander for the art section, look at me, deviating from the Swan archives for a bit, he makes a really good observation about the fact that it's the same three men playing these three different bands. It's just more commentary on that theme of the commodification of art because they seem like different music. They're all singing different genres. They have different costumes. They wear different clothes, but it's nothing new. It's the same thing, just packaged differently. And if you don't care about art, or you don't care about the process or the integrity of what's being put out there, if art is just a commodity to you, then yeah, you can slap whatever package you want on it and just try and market it in a different way. So the fact that it is the same three actors and it's never mentioned in dialogue that they're a different named band, or if they're even just supposed to be different people, it just adds to that theme of the commodification of art. After the press conference and our introduction to Beef, we check back in with Winslow.
How's it coming? Don't mean to rush you, of course.
Don't worry. It'll be finished.
From Winslow, we go to rehearsals, where Phoenix is tucked in with the background singers, and Beef... Well, Beef seems to be struggling because, you know, actually, I'll just let him speak for himself.
Swan, this was scored for a check. I'm not doing it in drag.
Oh, Beef. So Beef is this film's La Carlotta, our lead singer barring the spotlight from our ingenue. And Swan is like, oh, please, Beef, you can sing this better than any girl. Meanwhile, the girl in question, Phoenix, is watching the music that should be hers get butchered.
Long ago! And it started out the pages! The hours turn slow! Whoa!
And despite his embarrassment, Beef gets back up and says,
Who says I can't sing it?
To which Swan replies,
I like it. Keep working on it. Give it a beat. Make it completely yours.
Does Tasty Winslow Tasty mean nothing to you, Swan?
Tasty, Winslow. Tasty.
And you know what? Shout out to Beef here for being an artist with integrity and the only person with any clear insight into this situation, because at first, when Swan encourages him to make the music his own, he's like,
Far out.
But then immediately after, he's like,
Doesn't that kind of change the whole thing?
I like it. I like that he's considering the story. I like that he's considering the ramifications of any changes he might make. I like that he's considering the Rammies. And Philbin's like,
You heard what he said. Make it yours. As long as it sounds good, nobody's going to care what it's about.
and you can tell that that attitude does not sit well with Beef. No, here, I'm going to do the Philbin lines and then I'll let Beef do his. One moment. As long as it's good, nobody cares what it's about. I'm gonna do a voice for Philbin too, because I can't. He's just a guy, so I'm gonna talk in a guy voice. As long as it sounds good, nobody cares what it's about. Hey, as long as it's good, nobody cares what it's about. As long as it's good, nobody cares what it's about.
Is that so?
Nobody cares what anything's about.
Is that right?
Nobody even listens to lyrics anyway.
Dry up, Tubbo.
Thank you. This has been my performance as Philbin, the horrible, icky man who I don't like in this movie. And I like that. In the book, Carlotta is a
professional
who, while lacking the passion and fire to bring the music to life, has a technically perfect vocal instrument. And I feel that that part is often ignored in most adaptations, even in my own, and the focus is put on Christine and Carlotta's rivalry. And the way to often make us like Christine better is to make Carlotta seem worse, not just in personality or her attitude, but in her actual talent. But I like that here we get to see the artistic integrity of a professional in the La Carlotta role. Okay, so at this point, we've seen Swan leave Winslow's recording/composing studio 3 separate times. The first time, in order to get out, he knocks on a sliding metal door that closes off the recording studio to the rest of the paradise, and as he leaves, the door is locked by one of his henchmen. The second time, Swan leaves with a little, smirk over his shoulder, and as he walks away, he motions for the henchman to wheel in some ominous-looking building materials. And now the film cuts to the words, "The End," written at the bottom of Winslow's cantata. Pills are scattered across the pages, and Winslow is out cold on top of it. Swan comes in, he takes the last pages of the completed composition without Winslow waking, gives one final smirk, and tells his jean-jacketed tough guys,
"Seal it now."
Poor Winslow Leach. I mean, he's getting the dark side of the music industry, corporate backstabbing and legal issues, his art getting altered to be more marketable, drugs, with zero of the perks, no recognition, no chance to actually perform his music, and now he's getting Cask of Amontillado. Way to go to Phantom of the Paradise for adding yet another tally to its list of literary illusions. And when Winslow wakes up and realizes he's been Cask of Amontillado, he lets out a long, agonizing shriek of betrayal and rage that reverberates throughout the paradise.
Music. Swan!
What was that?
I'm Beef in the bathroom now. That's part of this. So it's the night of Faust premiere. The paradise is opening, people are already lining up, and Beef is getting ready in his dressing room. See what I've done here, creatively, with my decisions. The sound of the fan? That's a creative, directorial decision I made because I think it adds to the atmosphere and assists with the world I'm trying to build, and not because the cord of my microphone is too short to reach all the way across the apartment and into my bathroom. Anyway, so Beef is in his dressing room getting ready when he hears Winslow's reverberating cry of anger and despair. Me when I see the brick wall of anger and despair. And honestly, Beef is pretty spot on with his assessment of the situation. He makes 3 very astute points. Point number 1.
Oh, I knew I shouldn't be screwing around with a dead man's music.
Followed by point number 2.
This place is possessed.
And wrapping up with point number 3, Beef says the scream he just heard,
that was something trying to get out of its premature grave.
And I mean, honestly, yeah, way to go. 3 for 3. Beef's a real insightful guy. But Philbin just dismisses him, tells him to stop freaking out and to, go take a shower to cool off. Beef decides a shower sounds like a good idea, but before he gets into the shower, he makes some decisions I would advise against concerning the intake of certain illicit substances. Just say no, kids. Say it. Say no.
Stop it. Get some help.
And then does indeed hop in the shower where he starts to sing.
Life at last. Salutations from the other side.
And what follows is a beautiful homage to the shower scene from Psycho. And I say homage and not recreation because while it clearly pulled inspiration from the scene, it does not have the same dark end. So, Winslow, having broken through the brick walls of his prison and then exploded through the sheet metal door in front of his prison with all the skill and comedy of a Looney Tune, keep in mind we only see the evidence of this escape and not the escape itself, showing here. Winslow makes his way into Beef's bathroom, and Beef, oblivious, singing, doesn't notice the 6'7" leather-clad figure slipping into the room.
That's where all the fun begins. Hearts are broken. Bad guy wins.
Nor does he see the giant gleaming knife with which that 6'7" leather-clad figure is slowly cutting open the transparent shower curtain.
Well, you had better start the home while if.
No, it's not until Winslow stabs his arm into the shower
Never sing my music again.
and puts a plunger right over his nose and mouth that Beef realizes he's in danger. Winslow warns Beef,
My music is for Phoenix. Only she can sing it.
and if anyone outside of Phoenix attempts to sing his music, well,
Anyone else that tries dies.
love this scene, love the way the plunger comes out of nowhere, especially when Winslow's got a big knife. But what I like most about it is that it is a very interesting interpretation of the sinister notes that the Phantom was sending Carlotta in the book. It's a little more hands-on, but this scene is this film's take on the if Carlotta sings, she sings in a house with a curse upon it note that he sends as a warning before he drops a chandelier on everybody. And I think that's cool. I like it. I think it's there. It captures the spirit, even if it's not written on paper. Also, here's a couple behind-the-scenes fun facts for you. Beef got a plunger to the face upwards of 6 times, and the crew was messing with him because every time they would need to do a new take, they would make sure that the water was getting colder and colder. And this clear homage to the shower scene from Psycho was filmed 14 years to the day after Hitchcock filmed his iconic shower scene. So, very cool. Interconnectivity and coincidences. The beautiful woven tapestry of life. And cut. So, as I've stated, Beef's a smart guy. And the next thing we see him do is run out the back door of the Paradise with his suitcases in hand, Santa jacket on, for some reason, on his way to
Cincinnati to see my mother.
Philbin is, of course, having none of this, as just behind the two of them there is a massive line that's formed waiting for Beef to give his premiere performance at this, the opening of the Paradise. And despite Beef telling him,
Listen, Philbin, there really is a Phantom.
and the Phantom's music is for Phoenix, so
anyone else who tries dies.
Philbin forces him back inside to perform.
Help! The Phantom! Help!
Alright, so we are now at the 6th song of the film, Somebody Super Like You. This is the opening of the Paradise. It's hard, edgy rock music being performed on a stage that looks as if it was pulled straight from the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, while the undeads in Kiss makeup sing about building the perfect man from scratch as they harvest body parts from the audience. Let's break that down a little further. Okay, 1. The music. One of my friends and coworkers, AJ, has been watching these Phantom movies with me. At least the initial rewatch, and then I watch it another time or two while I'm writing the script and getting the footage for these videos. Anyway, AJ's got a good ear for music, and she pointed out that this movie, on top of everything else it's doing, also showcases the evolution of rock and roll. It starts with the 50s doo-woppy sound of early rock with Goodbye Eddie and the Juicy Fruits, and has now landed firmly in glam rock territory. 2. Speaking of glam rock, the whole Kiss makeup thing is actually sort of a coincidence timing-wise. Now, if you want to learn more, the Swan Archives has a whole page dedicated to the Kiss versus the Undead's makeup comparison, but basically the conclusion was that Kiss technically did do the makeup first, but they did it close enough to either the production of the movie or the premiere of the movie that, timing-wise, it's unlikely that anyone on set was inspired by Kiss specifically. However, Phantom and Kiss were both most likely inspired by the same source, Alice Cooper. And number 3, touching on the whole building a man from scratch and harvesting body parts from the audience, I am very confused on how Frankensteining Beef into existence ties into Faust. I did say this during the split screen part of the video, but I realized it might have been hard to hear me, so what I understand of the Faust plot comes from reading the synopsis of the opera online and the Faust scenes woven into the 1990s Phantom TV miniseries starring Charles Dance. And what I understand Faust to be about is an
Legendary German magician sold his soul to the devil for worldly experience and power.
He gets to be young, rich, and go after the cutie patootie that is Marguerite, where after he and the devil both drive Marguerite to madness, she ends up killing the child she has with Faust in the midst of that madness, is thrown into prison, but her soul is spared from the devil's grasp, and she is hooked up to a hoist and airlifted into the flies. And I've been listening to the songs from Winslow's cantata, studying the lyrics, and I just gotta say I'm having some difficulties seeing the parallels. In the song Faust, sure, it's pulling double duty as both Faust and Winslow's I Want song, about how he wants to rest in peace and dream a bunch of friends, and dream and find someone who can sing his music with him and be his love. And so, connecting the dots, I have to assume that this is the song that draws the devil to Faust in the first place, to actually make the deal. Or maybe it's a song that takes place toward the end of the show, if/when Faust laments his decision, if that actually ever happens. Either way, I can imagine how the song Faust fits into that modern retelling. Then we've got the Phantom's theme, Beauty and the Beast, from the montage. It's not just a song playing over the scene, it's diegetic. We hear the other acts auditioning in the gold record desk scene singing the same lyrics in various genres, which means that this song is part of Winslow's Faust. And with the original Faust character being so wizened and old and willing to sell his soul to the devil, which is a very ugly thing to do, your soul is worth more than that, comparing him to the beautiful young Marguerite, you could argue that that's a Beauty and the Beast theme. And so I can also see how that might fit into a modern retelling of Faust. But where in the original Faust does somebody get built out of dead body parts? That is not a Faustian bargain. That's Frankensteinian hubris. Why is he getting Frankensteined into existence? Do you know? Do you know? How does Frankenstein fit? Do you know? Have you seen Faust? Can you tell me why? Can you tell me? Ayudame! Faustian bargain versus Frankensteinian hubris aside, you cannot deny that this is an exciting scene. The guitars, the makeup, the costumes, the screams. And in addition to all of that, as the undead sing about finding they're harvesting bodies from plants in the audience. For example, one guy takes his axe, which is both what some people call their guitar, and also the guitar has a big old knife on it, and cuts the arm off of one of the screaming fans. It's obviously very fake as they do so. People are standing in the audience with these fake body parts that are then pulled off of them and onto the stage. Like, for example, they take this dude's torso. And then they pull the head off somebody's body, but it's obviously just a mannequin that they throw back in the audience. But during that first shot or two, where you don't know what's going on, it's actually quite effective. The band then hands the limbs off to Phoenix, who's slowly walking down the stage like this. And she takes the limbs back to the other background singers who are sewing this perfect man together, who is and the audience is going bonkers for this performance. Way back at the beginning of the movie, there was this weird little fracas that occurred during the middle of Goodbye Eddie, where one of the band members tried to make out with a girl in the audience, and then a fight broke out between two of the band members and some of the guys that were around the girl. And I feel like rule of threes, this was the first little warning of a violence in the audience that plays a crucial part of the finale. And now here in Somebody Super Like You, that violence is being fed and nurtured. It's desensitizing the audience until they need more. Oh, and more comes. The body is ready, so the table where they were building beef is sent up into the flies to get electrocuted. Classic Frankenstein stuff, we're all familiar, but as it lowers down, we see Winslow riding back up into the flies in a red cape. Now, when I first saw the red cape, I was like, what is the significance here? Is it red because he's angry? Is it red because he's about to go on a little spree? Is it his little red murder sweater? Is it red because this is his first time outside of the studio since he made a deal with the devil? Is there a deeper meaning here? And no, what it was is that behind the scenes there were 4 capes. There was a black one lined with silver, a black one lined with red, the red velvet cape, and I guess there was another one. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but they all looked different, and they would switch them as needed. Like if one got dirty, they would just slap a new cape on Winslow, and to quote the Phantom himself, as quoted by the Swan archives, it was strictly budget, says Finley. We figured if anybody noticed, their reaction would be, who cares? And honestly, who does care? It looks cool. He looks cool in every scene. He looks cool in every scene and in every cape. It's neat. There's silver on my finger because there's silver all over this side of my head. So, Beef pops up, the constructed man brought to life, and starts singing,
Life at last, salutations from the other side.
Life at Last, the 7th song on the soundtrack. It's a song about a man built up of what the audience gave him, the worst parts of themselves, their
Nightmares coming true, I am your crown.
So, Beef is performing in a house with a curse on it, and as must always happen in a Phantom adaptation, a chandelier falls. Sure, this time around our chandelier is a neon lightning bolt and it doesn't fall so much as it's thrown at Beef by the Phantom, but still. It is a lighting fixture wreaking havoc from above, and then the Swan Archives breaks down the entire pattern of how that scene was edited to give it that jittery effect. It was something like it would go 2 frames forward and then replace the next frame with a frame 3 frames back. I probably described that entirely wrong, but the reason I bring it up is just to highlight how many cool, crazy things Paul Hirsch did in the editing of this film. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is because guess who was in the audience at the premiere of The Phantom of the Paradise? A pre-Star Wars George Lucas, who specifically admired Paul Hirsch's editing. And then, guess who went on to be one of the editors and win an Oscar for his work on Star Wars A New Hope? That's right, Paul Hirsch. Like I said at the beginning, this movie has had a lot of cultural impact while sort of flying under the radar as a cult classic. Okay, I've got a little juice left in the tank, and by juice left in the tank, I mean it's only 11:57, and I still have to write like the last quarter of the script, but I figured why not get as much of it done as possible now? So I'm going to finish reading the rest of what I have written. There is still silver hairspray in my hair. I do still have the little heart birthmark. But I also feel like the volume cannot be denied or ignored. So here we are, and here will stay. Here we are, and here we will stay. Oh no, not my Wendy's cup. Not my Wendy's cup. So Beef is dead, and we're all very sad. The audience is going wild, though, screaming for Beef, screaming for more, lulled into a sense of complacency by the false violence of the scenes before, thinking that all of this has been some great performance, with some of them even climbing onto the stage to cheer against the closed curtain. They just that desperately want more. This is the greatest thing they've seen. And Swan, initially concerned because he underestimated Winslow yet again and has had havoc wreaked upon his stage in consequence, Swan observes the crowd's reaction, and you can see some evil little wheels start turning in his brain. Backstage, people are gagging and throwing up and crying, and rightly so. They've just seen a terrible thing, and Philbin goes up to Phoenix and tells her,
Phoenix, get out there and sing.
You're crazy!
Phoenix is already in a beautiful white dress, and initially I did question why she was wearing this dress when the rest of the background singers were in a different costume, but let's take a look at the source material, shall we? In Phantom, while Christine was not initially cast in the role of Marguerite, she was cast in the secondary role of Sybil, a poor young man who was in love with Marguerite and a romantic rival of Faust. So, here too, I think we can assume that while Phoenix is mostly relegated to the background, it's entirely possible that Phoenix was cast in Winslow's Faust's equivalent of the Sybil role. Anyway, Philbin is like, you have to get out there.
Look, some maniac killed Beef so you could sing. Don't disappoint him or else there'll be more bodies out there.
Meanwhile, Winslow has snuck up behind the guy controlling the spotlight, taken him out, and is now aiming the spotlight down at the stage where Phoenix is emerging from behind the curtain. And this look? This look right here? Oh, this is the sauce. Observe the mania in his eye. Unsettling. See the way he quivers with repressed longing. Disturbing. But consider that he's had his music stolen, his teeth ripped out, his face scarred, his voice destroyed, just got cask of Amontillado after signing a legally binding contract he thought would protect him from that kind of behavior, and if none of that had happened, he and Phoenix might have actually had a chance for something nice and normal and real. And what do you feel for the guy? You feel a little bad. What did I say? A well-balanced Phantom leaves you scared, but sympathetic. The sauce. It's here we get our 8th and technically final song of the film, called Our Love. There's still the Paul Williams version of Faust, but that's not sung on screen aside from that snippet we heard when Winslow's voice was getting edited. And there's the final song that plays during the credits, but this, Phoenix singing Our Love, is the last performance we see on screen. And it's lovely. Phoenix is singing a song about an old love. This love survives the ages. Two old souls who'll come together in a new life, and she calms the crowd immediately, stunning them out of their violent frenzy by the simple, pure beauty of her talent. And when the song ends, her dream realized, her opportunity seized, we get a moment alone with Phoenix where we see just how much the sound of that crowd impacted her, how much it meant to her, before we move to the next scene. Also, I think it incumbent upon me to say that based on the way the audience was acting earlier, and how they act later, I do somewhat doubt that this bloodthirsty crowd would react so positively to this very lovely, soft, simple performance, especially after they were just like losing their minds over Beef. But whatever, it's nice. Both Winslow and Phoenix are happy, and I am happy for them. We cut to Phoenix in her dressing room, and I think it's time we talk about the birds. There is, throughout this entire movie, a whole lot of bird imagery. Swan's name is Swan, which is a bird. Phoenix's name is Phoenix, which is a mythical bird. Then you've got Swan Song, the Death Records logo, the Swan Song Black Swan logo, Winslow's big bulbous bird mask, Phoenix's big feather jacket in the Beauty and the Beast montage, and now we get into Phoenix's dressing room where she's wearing a brown jumpsuit with birds all over it, which she eventually pairs with a big feathered jacket. So what's with the birds? I feel obtuse, and like there is probably some exceedingly simple, obvious explanation that I am just completely missing, but nothing is sticking out to me. In that article I mentioned earlier, A Look Back at Brian De Palma's The Phantom of the Paradise by Philip Auslander for the art section, Philip Auslander posits that the bird symbolism represents the, and I quote, symbiotic relationship that develops between the two men, one representing art, the other commerce, which is a good point. Those two men do have a symbiotic relationship, and one does represent art while the other represents commerce. But how do birds tie into that? How do birds tie into that? You can't just say, oh, here's what these characters are, and the birds are what that means. How is the birds what that means? And how does Phoenix tie in that explanation? Yes, Winslow and Swan are perfect foils for each other, and in some ways you could argue that both men could be an adaptation of the character of the Phantom from the novel. Winslow's passion for music, Swan's desire to control the theater, the disfigurement of Winslow's masked face, Swan's disfigured and twisted nature that he masks with charm, Winslow's desire to create, Swan's desire to possess, all things that are held within the soul of the one Phantom of the Opera. Yes, All that I get, but in that case, one could argue that Winslow's name should be Phoenix, because then we've got two birds representing two bird ideals. But that's not what's happening here. We've got a guy named Swan and a dude in a bird mask. Sure, there's a small seabird of the tuberose order called Leech's storm petrel, but the leech part of the name is after the guy who discovered the bird. Leech isn't a type of bird, so it's not a consistent parallel. All the Swan stuff I get, very strong through line, from swans to their dying songs to the concept of death. Yes, that all makes sense. Phoenix, sure, I'll get into her whole arc soon and how her name ties in possibly to the bird theme. We just need to get to the end of the movie where her arc is complete before I can go into those details, but just know her stuff tracks as well. I get the Phoenix aspect of it all. But why were birds chosen in the first place? Why are birds the metaphor? Is there a big obvious literary, film, or music lesson that I'm missing? Or is it just what the Swan Archives proposes on its page breaking down the theme? That birds often symbolize death, and Bird Boy Swan and Bird Girl Phoenix and Bird-masked Winslow are all destroyed by their ambition. Maybe, that works, that makes sense, I like that definition, but how much of the bird stuff was intentional metaphor, and how much was, yeah, put Phoenix in feathers, it'll fit the bird theme? Does it all tie in, or is some of it just a hat on a feathered hat? Maybe it is just vibes and branding which would align with Swan's business acumen. Maybe Winslow wears a bird mask because he's under the control of Swan, even as he rebels. He's not a bird boy, but he's forced to be one because of what Swan did to him. And maybe Phoenix wears a brown jumpsuit decorated in brown peahens, and I'm guessing that they're peahens because it looks like a plainer female bird, but it has some peacock colors worked into the design, because after the stunning success of her performance, we see her preening in front of her mirror. Preening in front of her mirror like a peacock, but she's a girl, so it's a peahen, serving as a visual metaphor of how her ascent into fame will also bring about her descent into a vapid lust afterer of applause. But I'm no bird watcher, and if she's covered in quails, then I have no idea what's going on here. Anyway, there is a bird thing going on in this movie, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and takes on it because it's there and I can see it. I just don't understand the why behind it. It hasn't revealed itself to me. I don't know why it's birds. Like, where did the birds come from? Okay, that's it. That's all that I have written so far. Wait, no, I had one more thing. And if you do write it down in the comments and it is very obvious, then I will feel like a silly goose. So I'm filming this exactly one day before I want to release this video, so please excuse me while I put on these sunglasses so I can read without you being distracted by the fact that I'm just reading straight off the page. The lipstick might have been a mistake. But I looked it up. I said lipstick in the 70s. I wanted to be thematically accurate, and they said bold red lip, and they said shiny gloss. So that's what we're doing, and that's what we're stuck with. Here we are, and here we exist. Birds. Am I right? Let's go back just a smidge. Curtain closes, iris out on Phoenix's face. We pick up in her dressing room, close up on a bouquet of roses from Swan, with a crowd of people chanting her name from outside the door as Swan enters. There's a beat as the two of them look at each other, both pausing before Phoenix, in a voice laden with longing and awe, says, The Phoenix we've seen up until this point was open, kind, opinionated, and strong. She was passionate about music and singing, sure of her own talents, and willing to believe that those talents would be what carried her.
I know I can sing these songs better than anybody.
And now, as far as Phoenix knows, those talents have done just that. She never let herself take the easy way of the casting couch.
I just can't do enough that way. I came here to sing.
And she was even willing to walk off stage when Philbin reminded her of it.
I'm not a screamer, I'm a singer.
But Swan gave her a chance to audition in spite of all that. Then, after proving herself as a useful member of the chorus, her big break came under terrible, extraordinary circumstances, and she shone brighter than they'd expected. But Phoenix doesn't know what we know, that Swan had relegated her to the chorus because of her talent, that he never intended to let her shine, and that the terrible, extraordinary circumstances that gave her the opportunity to finally perform were the culminating moves of a chess game she didn't even know she was a pawn in. Phoenix seems almost dazed as she stares at her reflection, dazzled by her success, dazzled by her own reflection in the wake of that success, as Swan himself, one of the most powerful and influential men in the world, compliments her.
I like your name. We won't have to change it. You're going to be a very big star, Phoenix. There are no words to express what you're going to become.
And in response, Phoenix tells Swan,
I'll do anything you want. I owe you everything. Just give me that crowd again.
Earlier in the film, if you'll recall, Swan asked Phoenix what she would give him in exchange for letting her audition, and he reminds her of her answer now.
And all I want is your voice.
Now, Walt Disney's seminal film The Little Mermaid would not premiere in theaters for another 15 years, meaning Phoenix had no way of realizing that this was wicked evil sea witch behavior.
And all I want is your voice.
Witch! And because she didn't realize that this was wicked evil sea witch behavior, and because it's been established that Swan is the ladies' man, ladies, Phoenix responds with a flirty little,
Is that all?
Both as a way to be like, that's all you're looking for, hot stuff, and also, I hope, to be like, oh, just my voice, is that all, the one thing that represents my hopes and dreams and talents in myself? Witch! I think it can be both things at once, but Swan only responds to the flirty vibe and tells Phoenix,
No. We'll go to Swanage and celebrate.
This is very Raoul in the dressing room behavior of Swan. And come to think of it, there really is no Raoul de Chagny equivalent in this retelling of Phantom of the Opera. Or, it's almost like trying to critique this as solely a Phantom adaptation is too narrow a lens to view the film through because it's pulling from lots of different classic literary and film references. But I'm going to keep doing that anyway because this is 100 Years of Phantom. So, Swan tells Phoenix to meet him in the car, and a few minutes later, she tries to do just that in her big, feathery jacket, but the crowd is far too eager to get their grabby little hands on her. So she starts hurrying in the opposite direction as the jean-jacketed henchmen try to quell the crowd. Oh! In that article I keep mentioning, our guy Philip said, Swan's bodyguards are dressed as bikers, perhaps in reference to the Rolling Stones having used Hell's Angels for security for their concert at Altamont in late 1969, an event often cited as the moment in which counterculture died. So, the fact that security is all rough and tumble in their Death Records jean jackets might not have been just for the vibes and the aesthetics, but instead another dig at the music industry and that all-important theme of the commodification of art. Anyway, as Phoenix hurries down the hall, she catches sight of a figure on a spiral staircase, and the figure beckons her over, so she runs towards them to escape the crowd. My apologies, I was being vague. Phoenix actually sees, from the neck down, a 6'7", actually, okay, how tall is William Finley? How tall is William Finley? I actually Googled this while writing the script, but I had already filmed myself saying 6'7" is a joke, so I have to do it again. Ah, yes, there, click, 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 there's the information I need. Phoenix sees a 6'4", that's plenty tall, leather-clad figure in a red line cape beckon her over with a single red rose, and then she seems surprised when the 6'4" leather-clad figure in a red line cape yoinks her up the stairs. Listen, she was stressed, she probably figured it was a stagehand dressed entirely in leather and didn't expect the mask, I'll allow it. Also, he brought her a rose. And what we get next is a sort of loose take on Christine's first journey to the house by the lake, the unmasking scene, and even the Apollo's Lyre scene. An exceedingly loose take on all of those, mind you, because instead of taking her under the opera and keeping her there for a couple of weeks after she unmasked him, Winslow takes Phoenix to the roof of the paradise where he unmasks himself. So Winslow drags Phoenix up to the roof and points down below, where a cheering crowd surges around some paramedics as they carry Beef's body out of the paradise. Beef, beef, beef. And says,
You wouldn't listen to me.
We cut briefly then to Swan and Philbin waiting in the car for Phoenix, where Swan's reaction to his new star being carted off to the morgue and the crowd that cheers for it is,
Look at them. They've really been entertained. They never want the show to stop.
To which Philbin replies,
Sure, how often's a rock star fried on stage?
And Swan says,
Quite an attraction.
Quite the attraction. Which is a line of thinking from Swan that bodes well for no one. So, pin in that. Back on the roof, Phoenix begs the 6'4" leather-clad masked madman who just took credit for Beef's murder not to hurt her, which Winslow assures her he would never do and calls her by her name, and Phoenix realizes,
You know me.
to which the Phantom responds,
I'm Winslow.
Oh, the sauce. Listen to that, remember? But Winslow is supposed to be dead. At least that's what Phoenix believes.
But Winslow's dead.
No, not quite.
And as she's actively trying to get away, Winslow starts trying to convince her that she can't trust Swan. Swan stole his music, Swan stole his voice, and Swan is the reason his face looks like this.
And giving me this.
Now, we don't get to see his face yet. Only Phoenix does, but we will. We will. Phoenix has been undergoing a bit of a transformation ever since she took to the stage. The earnest Phoenix from the beginning, slowly being dazzled and blinded by the glow of the spotlight and becoming deaf to everything but the roar of the crowd. And in that moment, after her initial shock at the sight of Winslow's face, you can see the old Phoenix for just a second, a flash of sympathy as she seems to recognize Winslow. Now, Winslow, poor boy, he's out of his sweet little gourd after everything he's been through, and despite his best intentions, his best, somewhat twisted intentions, to actually help Phoenix escape and be safe, he does come off a little strong when he wraps up his tirade on the evils of Swan by saying,
No one wants you, but you're all I have left. No one will sing in this paradise again. No one's ever going to sing my Faust again, no one but you.
And it's in this moment, when her fear of his desperation overcomes any sympathy, that the unconscious battle between who Phoenix truly is and the allure of what Swan is offering her, fame, success, is lost. Because when Winslow keeps going, trying to convince her to leave, trying to warn her that
I'll destroy you too.
Phoenix responds,
You're crazy! Why should I go with you? Don't you hear them down there? Why should I give that up?
But look at that crowd, Phoenix. They loved Beef too, and now they're cheering his corpse. They'll ask too much of you.
They want more now. They want much more. They want more than you could ever give.
Winslow cries, and Phoenix responds,
I'll give them whatever they want.
And then Phoenix is gone. Both literally, as she breaks free of Winslow's grasp and runs away,
No, Phoenix!
Get your hands off me!
and figuratively, as she succumbs to the glamour of Swan's illusion, leaving a forlorn Winslow watching her go. How do I know that the Phoenix we once knew is gone? How do I know that we've lost her? How do I know that she heard the sweet sounds of Swan's song and is now fully under Swan's sway? Well, I know this because when she gets down to the car, she opens the door and says,
The freak that killed Beef is up on the roof.
Oh, I'm sorry. The freak who killed Beef? The freak who killed Beef. That is a very un-Christine thing to say, Phoenix. Here's the thing, okay? Maybe not exactly un-Christine. In the book, does Christine say,
By now he'd let go of me and, racked by fits of sobbing, was dragging himself across the floor. Like some disgusting reptile, he squirmed and crawled away, went into his bedroom, closed the door, and I was left alone with my horror and my thoughts, but at least freed of the sight of the thing.
Sure, yeah. And I think it's warranted. I think Christine earned the right to say that after Eric, the Phantom of the Opera, had taken her hands and used her fingernails to scratch up his skeleton face and then told her she could never ever leave him. But just a few short pages later, in the same scene while Christine is telling all of this to Raoul, Christine is back to calling him poor, unhappy Eric. And that's because of the sauce. Christine is terrified of Eric, but her life has become so intertwined in his, first due to his manipulations that led to her reliance on the Angel of Music, and then because of the true pity she has for him, this man who's been denied love his entire life, that she is horrified and sympathetic in equal measure. And eventually, that sympathy and kindness are the cause for Eric's transformation from monster into man as he realizes the harm he's done Christine and chooses to release her. Before then, of course, promptly dying of a broken heart. Phoenix, at the beginning, is everything I'd imagine a Christine in the 1970s to be. Sweet, earnest, dedicated to her craft, and because this movie had taken place in a time where women's rights had progressed quite a bit from where they'd been in the late 1800s, the independence and self-reliance we see in Christine in the book is allowed to really shine and flourish in Phoenix. And Phoenix's actions on the roof, her desire to get away, that is the reasonable response of a woman in danger. Winslow just admitted to murdering a man, won't let go of her arms, and is saying stuff like,
"No one wants you, but you're all I have left."
When they hugged one time, once. So I think Phoenix, too, has earned the right to call her Phantom a freak if she wants to, just as Christine can be forgiven for calling Eric a disgusting reptile, because both had just been through a heinous ordeal. But it's the conversation leading up to that moment, and the fact that the scales don't tip back towards sympathy for Winslow that changes the meaning of this scene from a reasonable response to a choice that actually alters the progression of the plot away from the bittersweet but ultimately hopeful Beauty and the Beast redemption ending of the book to a different, darker ending for the movie. Because this isn't just Phantom of the Opera. It's Faust, and Phoenix is in just as much danger from Swan as Winslow was. In the book, the unmasking scene is one of the most haunting, horrifying scenes in the story, a scene where we see just how unhinged Eric can be, and how heavily his dangerous obsession weighs on Christine. Here on the roof of the Paradise, however, Winslow isn't making any great declarations of passion. He isn't claiming that any woman who sees his face belongs to him forever. No, Winslow actually unmasks himself, revealing a face he knows might frighten away the woman he loves, because by doing so, there's a chance he can convince her to leave before Swan's trap springs shut around her. But Phoenix doesn't listen. Because it's too late. Swan's trap was put in motion when he asked Phoenix,
"What would you give me to sing?"
And she responded with,
Anything you wanted.
The chance for an audition was the bait dangled in front of her, the way Swan dangled a restored voice and Phoenix herself as bait for Winslow. Performing on stage, her unexpected triumph after Beef's death, Swan's praise and promises. This is exactly what Swan did to Winslow when he restored his voice and told him he could rewrite his cantata for Phoenix. The illusion of a deal made good, the proof that Swan could be trusted despite his past betrayals. All the while, the walls were slowly closing in as Swan did whatever he wanted behind the scenes. Winslow's warning on the roof, as clumsily and as terrifyingly as it's delivered, is the last chance Phoenix has to get out of this mess before Swan snaps her up completely. But Phoenix wants what Swan's offering too much to see the truth of her situation. She wants the crowd, the fame, the success, all Swan's glittering promises. It doesn't matter that Winslow stands before her irrevocably altered and scarred, and it doesn't matter that Beef is dead and she can hear the crowd still cheering the spectacle of his demise. She can't see any of that past the specter of that crowd. This unmasking scene isn't about Phoenix discovering that it's a corpse that loves her and adores her and will never ever leave her. Though Winslow does his best to throw some hints in along those lines, you know, you're all I have. You're all I want. No, instead, this unmasking scene is the final stand in the moral battle for Phoenix's soul. There is a glimmer of light, just enough space to squeeze through the gaps and slip the trap and stay the open, kind, opinionated, strong, talented woman she's always been, if she would just give Winslow's words a moment to sink in, to understand them, to look away from that spotlight and see what's going on backstage. But when Winslow urges her to,
Phoenix, leave this place!
Her only thought is for the crowd. The dazzling, deafening crowd, and how lovely it felt to be loved by them. And in that moment, for the third time in the film, she echoes the same sentiment.
Anything you wanted. I'll do anything you want.
I'll give them whatever they want.
Phoenix will do anything for the spotlight, for the stage, for
That crowd.
That is her choice. That is the sound of the trap snapping shut. That's when we lose the open, kind, opinionated, strong, talented Phoenix who hugged Winslow on the stairs in the Swanage. And in her place we get
The freak that killed Beef is up on the roof.
There is no poor, unhappy Winslow to follow. All that's left now of the sauce is a few smears on the inside of the empty bottle, the scale between sympathy and horror unfairly weighted in horror's favor, and Phoenix the worse because of it. She chose Swan. She chose wrong, just as Winslow did, and now she must face her own set of consequences. Also, we know we've lost her to Swan's evil machinations because the film cuts to the Swanage, and we the audience and Winslow, are treated to the horrible sight of some serious canoodling between Swan and Phoenix to the dulcet alto tones of the love song Winslow wrote for her. Big bummer for everybody, honestly. So, against the backdrop of a rainy city skyline, and I love the way they chose to do this city skyline, it's just like cartoon cutouts of buildings in the distance. Way to go, Carrie from Brian De Palma's Carrie, Sissy Spacek. If you were the one who decided on the cardboard cutout, great job. I just love it. I love the look of it. I love the aesthetic of this movie. So, against the backdrop of a rainy city skyline, Winslow takes a big knife and just... But this is not the end of the movie. No, this is a plot twist. Swan ceases his canoodling and comes up on the roof with that big giant contract in his arms, pulls the knife out of Winslow's chest, and is like, "Oh, Winslow, didn't you even read what you signed?" Boom.
This contract terminates with Swan.
So we learn that Winslow
gave up your right to rest in peace when you signed this contract.
Which happens to be one of the major themes in Faust, his I Want song, when he signed the contract. So Winslow is now not allowed to die until Swan says he can. And if Winslow tries anything sneaky, the gaping hole in his chest is going to open back up, and
if you as much as say boo to anyone at the Paradise, you will never see Phoenix again.
And as a final insult added to his mortal injury, Swan tells Winslow that he needs him to write a whole new bunch of love songs for Phoenix.
About the love songs. Perhaps a duet.
Maybe even a duet. In light of this terrible news, Winslow does the next best thing he can think of. If he can't stab his own chest, he can stab Swan's. But Swan pulls the knife out, clean, no blood, just a hole in his silk pajamas, and says,
"I'm under contract too."
What? Swan is under contract too? What could this possibly mean? Well, I'll tell you. But to lead up to that reveal, I must first tell you what we learn in another spinning newspaper article. The very next evening, literally 24 hours after Beef's death, Swan is putting on the rest of Faust with Phoenix in the lead. But Swan has rewritten the ending, and instead of whatever Winslow intended in his incomprehensible Faust adaptation, the show will now end with Phoenix and Swan getting married for real on stage. No rest for the wicked, I guess. Swan, Philbin, and Phoenix pull up to the Paradise, and Phoenix? Oh, she's zooted out of her gourd and hungry for more, snorting up a tiny spoonful of what we must assume is drugs before they all file into the Paradise. Swan is holding his hand up to block the photographers from getting a picture of his face. A woman tries to flag Swan down, unsuccessfully.
Swan, you remember me, don't you? Betty, you do, don't you?
And explains that she and Swan went steady in high school before showing a locket with a picture of Swan from 20 years earlier.
He doesn't look any different.
Wow. Interesting, intriguing, we're almost to where I can explain, but first, fun fact, this specific interaction, Swan trying to avoid the paparazzi, the woman with the locket, was actually supposed to happen way back at the beginning of the movie, before Goodbye Eddie, but it was moved to the end of the film instead. I think that was a good choice. The mystery of Swan builds better in this order, but it was decisions like this, or the decision to reuse the same viewing room clips, that result in some inconsistencies with continuity throughout the film. But to quote William Finley on the subject of capes, who cares? Me! Usually. I'm usually the one who cares about this. And in most films, this kind of blatant disregard of those details would bother me. But Phantom of the Paradise has such a frenetic energy that these continuity errors almost feel like a creative decision rather than a mistake, making it so it really doesn't bother me in this movie specifically. But ask me about the 2010 action film Unstoppable starring Denzel Washington and Chris Pine, and I will have a very different, very thorough answer for you. Anyway, while Swan and co are getting ready for the show, our boy Winslow finally gets to sneak out from behind a mirror himself, a favorite pastime of phantoms of any entertainment venue. He's wearing his red murder sweater, and his makeup has faded from a rich black to a dull gray. He's been having a very rough day, Winslow, but now he's in the Swan archives and he's doing some investigating. He finds a tape labeled contract, or something equally eye-catching, plops it into this massive predecessor to the VCR and hits play. We see a youthful, short-haired Swan in the bathtub, on the verge of recording his own death. The words, "Contract, Swan," scroll across the bottom of the screen. Sure, he's currently young, healthy, and beautiful, but time, as we know, is a ceaseless march towards the sunset of our youth, and the thought of getting old and ugly is so repulsive to him that he would rather just die.
If I can't be young forever, I'd rather end it all.
But just as he's about to do the deed, his reflection starts speaking to him.
Why not? Stay young forever.
And it's
the devil from the Bible.
Now I know you've all been thinking, Summer, you mentioned the picture of Dorian Gray way back at the beginning, but have since only talked about Faust in Phantom of the Opera. Where's my ageless little freak whose portrait portrays his sins? Oh, right here, pal. Right here in this scene. The two swans go back and forth, the reflected swan subtly and confidently tempting the real swan to sign away his soul.
What soul?
So he can remain youthful and beautiful forever. In his stead, only the image captured in what would have been his suicide video will age, and Swan will need to...
You must watch it every day, just to see how lucky you are.
The only catch? Swan has to protect the image, protect the tape, because...
Oh, when it goes, you go.
And Swan agrees. I feel like it takes very little persuasion to get Swan to agree, actually. Like too little persuasion, because your soul is invaluable and precious, and you should not sell it to the devil for any price. I think that is a healthy and wholesome lesson we can take from all of this. Jesus loves you, you're worth more than that. But in any case, Swan signs the contract, and now we, and Winslow, know his secret backstory and the way to defeat him. This scene is really well done, and I just want to point out a few cool elements. One, Swan has a swan-shaped birthmark on his back, so I'm guessing that's supposed to be where he got his name. 2, while it's specified that this image will age in his place, this tape specifically, we now have an idea as to why Swan never lets himself be photographed or recorded. We've heard Swan's voice on tape before, distorted and warp, and so from that we can assume that any image of Swan would show his true self. And 3, the lighting. When the reflection first starts talking, it's lit just like the rest of the scene.
I'm real, and I'll leave if you want. You did call me.
But shifts into something more sinister.
You said you wanted to be young forever. Well, here I am.
As a warning to Swan and the audience of the reflection's true intentions. But in what feels like an allusion to 2 Corinthians 11:14, the reflected Swan briefly masquerades as an angel of light to make what he's offering all the more alluring.
For openers, you're going to look like me. Forever.
And the light shifts from red to blue. The red light is still there, though, in the background, slowly creeping back to full strength as
the devil. I go by many names.
Hands a contract through the mirror for Swan to sign. It's fantastic visual storytelling, very well done. Okay, so big revelation for Winslow, big revelation for us, that the powerful, famous Swan had taken such a dark deal and stopped aging 20 years ago. Swan is the first Faust in this story, but he is certainly not the last, because the tape hard cuts
Ink isn't worth anything
to new footage with the words Winslow contract scrolling across the bottom. We see the scene of Winslow signing the contract just as we did before, but this time we hear Swan's true voice rasping and grating until the tape hard cuts again.
Just sign this and it will all be legal.
To a very high phoenix being coerced into signing the contract as well. As similar as their journeys to the contract were, the moment of signing is very different for Winslow than it seems to be for Phoenix. Swan presented the contract calmly to Winslow. He gave Winslow time to read through it, even though he deflected any questions Winslow had. But Winslow's signing feels like a conscious decision on his part. Because Winslow had been burned by Swan before, severely, several times, but still chose to work with him and sign the contract even though he knew Swan would likely do so again. Now, Winslow didn't know he was signing a death pact with the proxy of the devil, but he still knew he was signing a contract with Swan. But on Phoenix's part, it's a little less certain. It's made clear several times throughout the film that Swan keeps his talent drugged.
Fed her the drugs to get her through the road tours?
Breakfast.
Pick me up. You just pass the stuff out. I take it.
This is, of course, another aspect of De Palma's commentary on the corruption of the music industry as a whole, and, internally, It is an expert business move on Swan's part to keep the people working for him reliant on him. Push them hard, get them addicted, keep them cycling through late nights and big shows so he can wring all the money he can out of them before they're
finished, washed up.
Phoenix is beyond under the influence. Like, if the influence is up here, Phoenix has a shovel. What I mean is that she is not of sound, coherent mind as Swan shoves the contract into her face. And the part she reads aloud simply says,
"Till death do us part." This is too much.
Then Swan stabs Phoenix's finger.
Come inside, you don't want to be late for your own funeral. Wedding, do you, girl?
Don't you think rushing things a little?
And she goes, blood.
Oh, blood.
And then he angrily says,
stop wasting it. Sign your name.
P-H-O.
To give this fair analysis, the clip of Winslow signing that we see in this contract scene was just the tiny little bit at the end. So we don't know what happened between Swan and Phoenix immediately prior to him being like, you have to sign it. But what we know for sure is that he didn't have her sign this contract when she was clear-headed and alert in the time between her performance last night and their canoodling, and instead waited until she'd snorted drugs in the car and is passing the devil's bargain off as a marriage contract. In my opinion, and keep in mind I'm no lawyer, I feel like this has to fall under some kind of duress, and therefore I don't think that this contract should be legally binding. But nevertheless, Phoenix has signed, it's on the tape, and she is now under contract. We are rapidly approaching the end of this movie, and the CCTV is delivering twist after twist after twist, because immediately following Phoenix's signing of the contract, we hard cut again to a live feed.
Remember, she must be hit just as Philbin says, till death do you part.
Where Swan, in his horrible rasping voice, face averted from the camera so we can't see what he actually looks like now that all this time has passed, is speaking to Philbin in a priest outfit and a man with a briefcase. And what is he saying to these two individuals? Oh, he's laying out his horrible little wicked evil sea witch plans for Phoenix. Remember his conversation with Philbin in the car right after Beef's death?
Sure, how often's a rock star fried on stage?
And Swan saying,
quite an attraction.
Well, Swan's plan is to repeat Beef's dazzling performance by having a hitman shoot Phoenix in the head right as they say I do, manufacturing another lucrative tragedy at the cost of Phoenix's life. Or would that be the cost? Okay, so this next bit that I'm going to go over is just how I interpret Swan's actions based on context clues and the evidence provided. This may be the most obvious interpretation, but just in case it was not the obvious interpretation, and in case I've sussed out something clever, I'm going to go over it now.
And hey, listen here, pal. Don't you for 1 second think I don't know that this might be an inaccurate read of the situation, but we're just friends having fun, so listen.
Using context clues in the evidence provided, I don't think Swan ever planned for Phoenix to die. Sure, he says,
an assassination live on television? That's entertainment.
Clearly intending to cash in on a spectacle just as deadly as Beef's, and the gut reaction to a line like that is to do as Winslow does. Blow up the Swan archives and thereby destroy the contract and Swan's link to immortality before rushing off to stop the shooter. Swan's been working in the music industry for years. He's been making people famous for decades. But just because he makes someone a star doesn't mean they automatically get roped into his Faustian bargain. If that was the case, the tape would have cut from Swan to the lady Philbin was hung up on, to the Juicy Fruits, to Winslow, to Beef, then to Phoenix. But that's not what happens. There's only 3 people on the contract tape: Swan, Winslow, and Phoenix. Swan is on the contract because he originally made the deal. He roped Winslow into the contract because Winslow's music was
the new sound of the spheres.
And if the guy writing the sound of the spheres is a mentally unstable madman bent on your destruction that you pushed into lunacy, it's probably best to get him on your same immortal contract so that you can keep getting more of that sweet, sweet spherical sound and he can't harm himself or you. That's money forever, baby. But why is Phoenix on there? Well, if you're that same ageless immortal producer who's got an ageless immortal genius composer on your payroll who happens to be obsessed with a singer so talented that you yourself called her perfect and who, with one ballad, was able to soothe a bloodthirsty and riotous crowd, and if you, ageless immortal producer, had just come to the realization that elaborate onstage deaths are quite the attraction, what are you going to do? Keep killing your stars until people get spooked and refuse to work with you? Or figure out a way to market and package and sell an on-stage death, at least once, spectacularly. Or maybe even over and over again.
I like your name. We won't have to change it.
There's no reason why Swan would commission Winslow for more songs for Phoenix.
I'll need a whole bunch of new love songs for Phoenix.
Nor would he wave Phoenix around as a bargaining chip.
If you as much as say boo to anyone at the Paradise, you will never see Phoenix again.
Nor stage an elaborate wedding to Phoenix if he was planning on getting rid of her the very next day. With Winslow, Swan has the music. With Phoenix, Swan has the talent. And now, with Beef's death, Swan has his marketing angle. Under contract, he could kill Phoenix in a stunt far bigger than Beef's, further reaching, televised.
Coast to coast.
Something no one would ever forget. And, like her namesake, Phoenix would rise from the ashes, bringing him more fame, more success, more money. And while I think he probably would only do it the one time and really capitalize that, he could do it night after night if he wanted to. So that's what I think Swan's plan for Phoenix was, his way to get, in the immortal words of Hannah Montana, the best of both worlds. He can have another insane night where a rock star dies on stage, but still get his money's worth out of Winslow and Phoenix, kill her, bring her back even more popular than before, and then parade her in front of Winslow to force him to write love songs for Phoenix and another man. Swan being the other man. But that's just a theory. Okay, we're here. We've arrived to the final act of this film. It's loud, hectic, busy, but almost devoid of back and forth dialogue. I'm going to narrate the scene, lay it out for you, and I might get a little purple in my prose to do so I can hopefully convey the strange, haunting, empty horror of the ending. I honestly think the only thing I can compare the end of Phantom of the Paradise to is the ending of Midsummer. Like, literally after watching this movie, I tried to look up if Ari Aster was inspired by Phantom of the Paradise when making his film, because this finale captures that same sense of lingering dread that you get when you see Danny smile as the yellow hut burns. So we left Winslow running towards where the CCTV footage showed the shooter lining up his shot to take out Phoenix. Meanwhile, the finale of Faust is in full swing. A massive recreation of the Swan Song logo takes up most of the stage, and this groovy 70s instrumental music is playing over a wild scene. Dancing girls in black swan costumes, security guards breaking the fourth wall, a silver-masked swan rising from the center of a lotus flower, and Phoenix dances on stage with her signature move, confetti in her hair. And in the background, we can see the crowd is losing its mind, especially the most rabid, fervent fans in the front row. Now, as I've made very clear throughout this synopsis, there is the recurring theme of Swan taking Winslow's music and altering it, destroying Winslow's artistic vision to create something marketable, the commodification of art. But here's the thing. Swan's good at what he does. He's right about what the crowd wants. The crowd loved the nostalgia movement of the Juicy Fruits. We, the viewers of this movie, love the ocean vibes of the Beach Bums. And the audience opening night of the Paradise particularly loved the violent, edgy rock of Beef. This crowd mindlessly consumes whatever Swan serves them, the way pop culture is often mindlessly consumed. And over the course of this movie, Swan feeds the crowd, and us, the viewer, more and more violence. We start with the unchecked fistfight and the roughly stolen kiss during Goodbye Eddie. Swan says nothing, never intervenes, the movie doesn't pause or comment, the song continues. Another casual, cavalier act of harm to highlight the corruption inherent in the system. Now, there is no crowd for the violent end to the Beach Bums rehearsal of upholstery, but we, the viewers, see it. It's a catalyst for Swan's deal with Winslow, and it ups the ante. It makes us ask, wow, if a car's gonna explode this early in the film, what's going to happen next? Next is the opening night of the Paradise, a show that is inherently violent and made to rile up the crowd, with members of the band harvesting body parts directly from the audience. Now, the body parts are clearly fake. It's all part of the show. All of it has always been part of the show. Little liberties taken here and there, stage effects simulating terrible acts, but it's all fun. It's all fake. It doesn't mean anything. But isn't it quite the attraction? By the time Beef is electrocuted on stage, the crowd is so desensitized that it doesn't even realize what it's witnessed. There is no horror, no sorrow. We see members of the crowd climb on stage to paw at the closed curtains, hungry for more. And as Phoenix makes her way down the aisle, onto the raised lotus where Swan waits to marry her, we can see that same hunger lingering in the eyes of the crowd. The wedding ceremony begins just as Winslow makes it to the shooter. He gets there in time to knock the gun askew, but not in time to stop the assassin from pulling the trigger. So the bullet flies, and it hits Philbin right here in the middle of his forehead, but the music doesn't stop. It keeps going on and on as if nothing happened at all. The crowd screaming in ecstasy at the sight of another dramatic on-stage death. Winslow makes his way towards the stage. Phoenix kneels to check on Philbin, and those first few rows of the audience start pulling themselves on stage, grabbing at the girls in the skimpy Swan costumes so they can dance with them to this never-ending music. Winslow loosens a rope in the flies and swings down over the stage, unmasking Swan as he sweeps by, revealing his true face for the first time.
When it goes, you go.
The tape had to be protected, and when the tape goes, Swan goes, but the Swan archives are on fire, and so, it seems, is Swan, his skin looking as if it's melting off of his bones. Phoenix sees his horrible, dripping, melted wax skin and shies away, which enrages Swan. He grabs her by the throat, shouting, Meanwhile, the audience is still dancing, dancing, dancing. Nobody sees or tries to stop Swan as he strangles a woman in front of them. But Winslow cares. Winslow only cares about Phoenix now. He hurries toward the lotus flower, pulling one of the sharp beak hats off of a dancer as he goes by. And one of the wildest men in the crowd sees Winslow do this and takes a beak off a dancer himself. Phoenix is fading as Swan squeezes tighter and tighter, only stopping when Winslow finally stabs him with the sharp black beak. Swan doesn't go down right away, but he stumbles, blood blooming on his white suit, and at the same moment blood blooms on Winslow's chest as well, as his self-inflicted knife wound starts to bleed. Then, unexpectedly, the wild man from the front row is there, taking his own sharp bird beak and stabbing Swan himself, before passing the weapon on to a friend who also stabs Swan. Round and round it goes until a group of rowdy, hungry, empty-eyed men hoist Swan into the air and carry him away from the lotus and out of sight, presumably to continue. The camera has been flipping back and forth between Swan and Winslow, these foils of each other, these two sides of the same coin, the phantom split in two, the angles and their actions mirroring one another. Swan, arms flung wide as he's carried unwillingly to his demise. Winslow, arms flung wide as his own self-inflicted demise catches up to him. A woman from the front row, the same eager front row that birthed that wildest man, steals the mask from Winslow's head as he clutches his chest and falls to the ground. And we see, finally, his distorted, unmasked face, the record impressions burnt into his skin, his ruined eye, bulbous, dead, and gray. The camera on Winslow is this crazy fisheye lens as he crawls through the dancing crowd that has now completely overtaken the stage, crawling towards and reaching for the only thing that matters to him, Phoenix. The music changes, the incessant wild beat fading beneath the mournful sound of a new tune. A tune that doesn't match the wild, frenetic energy of the unruly, writhing crowd. Simple piano and minor chords and nothing more, though the crowd keeps dancing, dancing, dancing to a beat we can no longer hear. It's a tune that matches Phoenix, tears in her confused eyes as she backs away from this terrifying, reaching thing, crawling on its belly like a disgusting lizard, frightening her, slowly chasing her after so many other frightening things just happened, one right after the other. And crawling along beside Winslow, blood on his hands and his red Hawaiian print shirt, is that same wild, dancing member of the crowd, matching Winslow's pace, eyes fixed on Winslow's ruined face as Winslow reaches an empty, grasping hand out for Phoenix. All we can hear now is the sound of the piano and the sound of Phoenix's labored breathing. You can see that none of this makes sense to her. None of this is right. This isn't what Swan promised. This isn't the crowd from the night before. And the new Phoenix, the blind Phoenix, the Phoenix who chose Swan's lies, shakes her head and backs away. But if there's one thing we know, it's that this contract terminates with Swan. And Swan must have finally reached his terminating end, because Winslow reaches out for Phoenix one final time, slumps over, and dies. And it's in that moment that Phoenix's face clears, because her contract has ended too, and we finally see her, the Phoenix from the beginning, as she sees Winslow, for the first time since she swore she'd give Swan anything to sing. She goes to him, crouching protectively over his head, crying his name softly as the camera pulls away, rising higher and higher. I said earlier that the ending leaves you with a strange, haunting, empty horror, because that's how it feels. Though empty might be the wrong word, maybe hollow is better. The sad finality of a small animal dying in a big cave, while the cries and laughter of those still living bounce ceaselessly off the cavern walls. For all the people still dancing and screaming and stabbing and twirling around them, Phoenix and Winslow are alone. The mindless, hungry, eating crowd, nothing but the cruel, twisted echoes, bouncing off the cavernous walls of the paradise, of everything Swan promised them both. And with Winslow gone, and the scales fallen from her eyes, Phoenix finds herself in the big cave at the end of a long, dark road she hadn't realized she was walking, all alone, now that the other small animal that tried to walk with her has died. Looming over Phoenix and Winslow, eerily still, is a woman wearing Winslow's stolen mask. The wild, dancing man from the front row stands from where he'd been crouching by Winslow's corpse, takes the edge of his blood-soaked shirt, and swipes it across the face of one of the women who'd stood with him in the front row, leaving a crimson stain across her cheek. The camera continues to rise, the crowd a writhing sea. The wild, dancing man flings his arms into the air on the downbeat of a dark guitar riff, and the crowd is replaced with a burning Death Records logo. The end. Oh man! What an ending. We are then treated to some final credits in the style of Breaking Dawn Part 2, and by that I mean we get little clips of the different characters as we see their names.
Your music lingers on all of us.
To the final song on the soundtrack, a song which was originally going to play over footage of Beef's funeral and feature a little girl hopping on Beef's casket and tap dancing as an audition for Swan. They were going to have several people, coming up to Swan throughout the funeral, completely disregarding the fact that they were at a wake, trying to audition and get their big break. But what ended up happening was they had to keep rescheduling the shoot date for Beef's funeral scene, and it kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed until they ran out of time and had to scrap the scene entirely. And my favorite part of the credits has got to be Swan's montage paired with these lyrics.
Nobody likes you, better off dead. Goodbye, goodbye. We've all come to say goodbye.
But with that, we have reached the end of the synopsis, so let's hop into any remaining trivia. Alright, so Trivia 1. The interior of the Paradise was filmed at the Dallas Majestic Theater, which I find personally delightful because Phantom of the Opera on Broadway would later run in New York's Majestic Theater, and Phantom in London ran on the West End in Her Majesty's Theater. So that's just a lot of really majestic places for this majestic story to be told. There's connections, similarities, coincidences coinciding with each other. Yes, it's also wonderful. And I just think that's neat. I think that's nifty, and I wanted to mention it. Trivia 2. In the director's interview that I found on the special features, Brian De Palma said that he originally wrote the script for Phantom with a woman named Louisa Rose, and he'd worked with her on a couple other projects. I think I'd read that there was an earlier film of his named Sisters that she helped co-write, and so they had a history of working together. They kept getting lowball offers on the script, and Louisa kept refusing to sell. And finally, it hit a point where I think they got an offer from the studio that ultimately purchased and produced the film, if I'm remembering that correctly, and Brian De Palma was like, hey, this is all the money we're going to get, so I think we have to sell. And when Louisa Rose refused again, Brian De Palma went through the script and cut out and rewrote everything that she'd contributed so that he could sell the script under his own name. J'accuse. Swan behavior. Evil wicked sea witch machinations.
Thief.
Are you telling me that the commodification of art happened behind the scenes on this scathing indictment of the commodification of art? Rough. Honestly, not a situation I'd want to be in on either end, and a horrible thought experiment either way, because sure, if you took something and cut out and rewrote everything that that other person did, like, I guess you could say that it was yours alone. But how do you cut away that collaborative foundation, the brainstorming, the shaping of the story that happens before even one letter is typed? You can't. You can't do that. It's too tangled. So I'm glad Brian De Palma is giving her credit in the interviews, and I'm glad that when you type Louisa Rose Phantom of the Paradise into Google, you'll see that she pops up as a co-writer on IMDb, on Letterboxd, in several articles, but in the film itself, she's not credited at all. Though I am hoping Editing Summer can hop in here with a clip that proves me wrong. Ah, darn. Trivia 3. So in order to get an audience of extras into the Paradise for scenes where Beef and Phoenix were performing during the opening night of the Paradise, production put up flyers around Dallas for a free rock concert for anyone who'd like to be in a movie. And initially there was a big turnout and a packed house. But as the day wore on, the crowd started getting bored with having to listen to the same song over and over again, or the same part of the same song as they got coverage from different angles, and so people started trickling out of the theater. So eventually, they took the remaining group of people and started shuffling them around so that they just filled up the space needed for whatever angle they were shooting at. And they encouraged people to swap jackets and hats so that it seemed like a fresh batch of Paradise patrons in each angle of the crowd. So, if you're watching closely, you might just see some repeated faces. Trivia 4. I just realized I never got into the Winnipeg of it all, and to get into the Winnipeg of it all, I need to talk about the marketing for the film. So what I'm about to say is partially off the dome what I remember reading on the Swan archives, and partially my hastily typed notes so that I wouldn't forget my thoughts on what I was reading on the Swan archives, but I did not actually properly script this. So let me just kind of break down the marketing. So the marketing for Phantom of the Paradise was an absolute mess because Fox didn't know how to advertise this movie. They focused so much on the rock and roll, like even with this tagline, he sold his soul for rock and roll, aiming for a younger audience of rock avid teens, that it ended up isolating the audience of horror fans that would have been the target market for this movie. Brian De Palma had been trying to bring together rock and horror, which he considered, closely aligned, but it just wasn't working. So after Fox fumbled the marketing and failed to come through with a lot of what they'd planned, like they had radio and print marketing that they had planned, and then like half of the posters and billboards that they had planned to go up just never ended up getting posted. So half the marketing plan just didn't come through. After that just all sort of fell apart, a soft re-release was attempted with marketing that left the rock and roll aspect out of it. It played down Paul Williams, even to the point where like this poster had Paul Williams this tiny at the very bottom as a little tiny itty bitty Swan in a top hat, because they just were like, no, we're just not going to focus on the music aspect of it. We're just going to focus on the horror. And so in this version of the marketing, they focused more on the story, changing the tagline from he sold his soul for rock and roll to, which I mean, I think that's the better tagline personally. It's very catchy. It rhymes, but they changed it to he's been maimed and framed, beaten, robbed, and mutilated, but they still can't keep him from the woman he loves. And this worked way better. And Brian De Palma is quoted as saying, when we revised the campaign in the US and made it seem more like the Phantom of the Opera than a horror rock film, we got an entirely different response. And if Brian De Palma would have asked me, I would have told him to go for the Phantom market. It's a built-in audience of very passionate fans, and clearly the people who would enjoy this most. But alas, my mother was still in swaddling cloths when this movie premiered, and I would not make my debut into this world for another 19 years. But it's fine. And it found its niche eventually. And here we are, in 100 years of Phantom. Also, Brian, Fox, anyone alive in the 70s, you named the movie Phantom of the, and sure it ends in paradise instead of opera, but Phantom of the on its own is like a sleeper cell activation phrase. Why else would I have watched Phantom of the Mall, Phantom of the Megaplex, or got into a fever-addled listening loop for Story of the Phantom from Goosebumps the Musical based on Phantom of the Auditorium, which I also read? If I am promised a guy lurking in a venue of any kind, I'm there, okay? Phantom of the what? Tell me.
I have my wallet out. Tell me where he is. I want to see the sad man cry.
That's the market that Fox was missing, and I'm glad they finally got their house in order. But Phantom really struck a chord in Winnipeg. A big issue with their marketing in the US was they tried to do so with radio and print ads, but this movie is very visually stunning, so it wasn't grabbing attention through music alone. But in Winnipeg, they aimed the marketing specifically at children, saturated the airwaves with TV commercials, and boom, wouldn't you know it, the crazy, bright, colorful movie did really well with kids, and eventually word of mouth spread, and it had an 18-week run in a Winnipeg theater and then was reshown in theaters several times over the course of the year, leading to like over a year of it being in theaters. It also did really well in El Salvador, with several of the songs going to #1 on the charts, and there were specific episodes of TV shows that were aired in El Salvador because Paul Williams was in them. And he had a huge following in El Salvador. And Phantom and Paul Williams were so popular in El Salvador that movies were marketed specifically by their connection to Phantom of the Paradise. So a Brian De Palma film would come out and it would say, from the director of Phantom of the Paradise, or this person who starred in Phantom of the Paradise. So it did really well in El Salvador.
Oh, also Rod Serling, who does the Twilight Zone intro, is the guy who did the intro for this movie. The one who was like, the new sound of the spheres. That was him. That was a dimension in time, a dimension in space. It's a dimension of sight, a dimension of mind. None of us need to know. We'll figure it out when we're meant to.
A dimension of sound, a dimension of sight, a dimension of mind.
Okay, but that wraps up trivia, so let's move on to rankings. All right, so the first ranking is on book accuracy. There are 6 elements that we'll be basing this accuracy on. 1, overall adherence of the plot to the source material. 2, Christine's outfit when the Phantom kidnaps her. 3, the unmasking scene. 4, the appearance of the mask. 5, Eric's unmasked face. And of course, the final lair scene. That's number 6. Overall adherence to the plot is going to be the heaviest hitter in this, making up 30% of the final score. And this movie... it is not book accurate at all in terms of actual plot. The names are different, the time is different, location is different, but you can still make a book accurate adaptation with those changes. Phantom of the Paradise, however, also changes the origins of the Phantom's face. There is no Angel of Music. It brings in other literary references that change the course of the plot. There's no gala performances, no Joseph Bouquet, no trips to her father's grave, no house by the lake, no trips down to the cellars at all, no scorpion, no grasshopper. And yet, there is the sauce. I am someone who adores when a film adaptation is accurate to the source material. It's the obvious choice. It's all right there in the book. Just put it on the screen. There are times, however, when you can have an adaptation that changes almost every aspect of the story, but it can feel incredibly book accurate because the adaptation understands the spirit of the novel. Phantom of the Paradise is one such adaptation. This movie captured the essence of the Phantom's character in a way no other adaptation I've reviewed thus far has managed to. Chaney came close because the 1925 film is the most book-accurate version to date, but even then there's that wall of silence between Chaney and the modern audience that keeps us from the sauce he's trying to serve. Phantom of the Paradise seemed to have taken Eric and Christine and moved them into the 1970s, preserving his sad, desperate love for her while updating the story to the times. I think that's why we have so many adaptations of Phantom. No one's quite gotten it right yet. We're still looking for that perfect adaptation where we get the details from the book and the spirit of the book as well. I, of course, still maintain that my man Guillermo del Toro could direct a stunning book-accurate movie or 8-episode TV miniseries with Jamie Campbell Bower in the role of a book-accurate, noseless Eric. But Phantom of the Opera did remarkably well. So while rightfully I should be giving book accuracy a big old goose egg, or like maybe a 2 because there is a Phantom and an ingenue, I'm going to give it a 15. I'm going to give it half credit for Winslow Leach alone, the first film Phantom in 50 years since Lon Chaney to accurately capture the Phantom's character. 15 out of 30. Next is Christine's outfit when the Phantom first kidnaps her. This is such a small detail that almost no one adheres to, but it's always nice to see it when it happens, so it's going to be worth 5%. In the book, Christine is charmingly dressed in boys' clothes as she was playing Sybil, Faust's romantic rival for the fair Marguerite, a young man often played by a soprano, in Faust when the chandelier dropped. In this movie, the chandelier is a neon lightning bolt. We do not know enough about Winslow's Faust to know if it even has a Sybil role. He does not kidnap Christine in her dressing room while she's still in her stage costume and drag her deep below the opera, but rather lures her onto the roof after she's changed into a fabulous peahen patterned jumpsuit with matching feathered jacket. But Phoenix is wearing pants, and she was just performing in Faust, so what the heck, 2 out of 5. Next is the unmasking scene. I think I made almost all the pertinent points I wanted to make about the unmasking scene while going over it in the synopsis. It was very different from the book and used for a different purpose. In the book, the scene is fueled by rage, brokenhearted desperation, and betrayal as Eric unravels when Christine pulls the mask off his face. In the movie, it is a last chance for Phoenix that she squanders in pursuit of success, and the Phantom unmasks himself. I loved it. I thought it was very well done, but it didn't hold the same horror as the book because the circumstances around it were so different. So in that case, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 15. Next is the appearance of the mask. This is worth 15% of the final tally. And in the book, the mask was black, covered from forehead to nose, and featured a small scrap of black fabric, a barbe du masque, that covered from nose to chin. Winslow's mask, on the other hand, well, that was a big old metal bird head with one eye that was not book accurate in the least, but it looks amazing. It's a cool mask. Also, I still don't know about the birds. Swan got stabbed to death with a bunch of bird beaks. Is it just bird symbolism for the sake of bird symbolism? Just birds for birds' sake? I don't know. 7 out of 15 for the mask being really cool. All right, next, Eric's unmasked face. Another crucial aspect of the story worth 15% of the final tally. In the book, Living Skeleton Man, Death's Head, our boy's supposed to look like a corpse that rotted almost all the way down to the bone, but hopped up to play the organ and sing a little song before he completely crumbled into ash and dust, okay? Winslow's face was crushed by a record press. Different men fighting different battles. The makeup, when we finally see it, is fantastic. Unsettling, super disturbing with that dead gray eye. You can see like the imprint of the record on his face. I think he's got like just a hole in his skin right here, which is just like, oh. But yeah, very, very well done. And I would say that the way he is in that final scene, crawling towards the camera, crawling towards Phoenix, reaching for her while his face is just in full view, better conveys the feeling that you get in the unmasking scene in the book than you get in the unmasking scene for this movie on the roof. It's incredibly well done. The face looks great, but alas, he's not a skeleton, and I will not be satisfied until he has no nose. 5 out of 15. And we finally reached it, the final layer. Very important, worth 20%. And in the book, the Phantom has kidnapped Christine and brought her back to the house by the lake. Raoul and the Persian are trapped in the mirrored torture chamber, caught while trying to rescue Christine. And Christine must choose between turning a figurine of a scorpion as a way to say she'll marry the Phantom, or a figurine of a grasshopper, which will blow the opera house up. Christine ends up choosing to save everyone by turning the scorpion and promises she will be the Phantom's living bride and actually be married to him and stay with him and live her life at his side, which culminates in the Phantom kissing her on the forehead right there. And when she doesn't die, when he sees she even leans forward a little, willing to be kissed by him, the weight of her kindness overwhelms him and he lets her go, lets Raoul go, and she kisses him once right there, don't look, Daroga, before he settles his affairs and dies of a broken heart. Oh. If I think about it too much, I will cry. Worth 20% of the final tally. We actually get no final lair in this movie. We get no redemption. Winslow isn't even trying to marry Phoenix. Swan is. The ending of this film is dark and haunting and sad. And the only one who makes it out is Phoenix, and she sure doesn't make it out unscathed. It's an incredible ending to this film, and I feel momentarily speechless every time I watch it because it just feels so heavy in the hand. But it is not book accurate. However, because there is the threat of marriage, I will give it 4 out of 20. So, for book accuracy, the final tally is 38%. Look at that little line of teal. Look at that little line of teal because Christine was wearing pants, and this is the first time we've come even close to having her charmingly dressed in boys' clothes. Pants, 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 pants. All right, that is one ranking down. Final ranking to go. Next is where the film lands in terms of my personal enjoyment, where it ranks amongst the other Phantom adaptations I have seen. Here are the tiers. Right up at the top, Angel of Music, the best of the best. This is where the book lives. This is where my favorite adaptations will live. Christine Daae is the tier for adaptations that are really good. They may not be entirely book accurate, but they are well made, they're fun to watch, they're enjoyable. These are our ingenues, beautiful and full of promise. Next is the La Carlotta tier. La Carlotta in the book had a technically perfect voice, but it was a voice with no soul or passion. She could hit the notes, but it wouldn't make you feel anything. In that same vein, the La Carlotta tier is for adaptations that check a lot of boxes, but don't actually move me. Raoul de Chagny is the tier for adaptations I feel neutral and sometimes even positive about. The Persian is always missing from these film adaptations, so the Persian tier is for adaptations that miss the point of the novel. The Phantom of the Opera is for evil criminal adaptations that want to blow up the opera house. These are the worst of the worst. And Eric is the tier for evil criminal adaptations that want to blow up the opera house, just as bad as the worst of the worst, but through an act of kindness have transformed from monster into man. So these are really bad movies with one redeeming quality. When I put this movie into my DVD player, I assumed it was going to be a Raoul de Chagny or maybe a La Carlotta. I remember thinking, that was okay when I finished it for the first time 10 to 12 years ago. But now having truly seen the film, not passively watching it, but paying attention to the nuance, the details, the layers, the performances, the lyrics, the lore, and realizing how the echoes of this film have subtly influenced pop culture from behind the scenes for years, even today. It is a rich story, visually stunning, with so much to unpack and admire. When Phantom of the Paradise released, it got a lot of mixed reviews, but this one review written by Richard Schickel for Time magazine manages to capture a lot of how I feel about the movie, and I'm going to pull this quote from the Swan archives. It says, "Phantom of the Paradise is much more than a bundle of neat, often amusing analogies. De Palma has something richer and more relevant in mind than parodying a theatrical property he knows is too old and, in its way, too good for mere camp treatment. He has borrowed the plot as a vehicle to satirize the whole corrupt, pretentious, and self-important world of pop culture." The rest of his review is very insightful and really sums up the movie nicely, but it was this line in particular that stuck out to me. De Palma has something richer and more relevant in mind than parodying a theatrical property he knows is too old and, in its way, too good for mere camp treatment. Phantom of the Opera, Gaston Leroux's original work, is something of a satire, or at least a twist on the Gothic novels of that time, making the monster sympathetic, allowing Christine's kindness to be what saved the day over Raoul's thwarted brawn, and creating a richly detailed world and compelling story that has continued to inspire artists all these years later. Phantom of the Opera is too good for mere camp treatment. But I also loved what he said next, that De Palma borrowed the plot as a vehicle to satirize the whole corrupt, pretentious, and self-important world of pop culture. By utilizing the framework of Phantom, the drama of the setting, the dynamic between the Phantom and the woman he loved, the cruelty and isolation of the mask, his passion for music, it gives the film a strong, compelling, and familiar arc to follow, made familiar in the 1970s by 3 American Phantom films, 1 Chinese film, a handful of cartoons, and of course the novel. And it's the familiarity of that arc that provides a sturdy structure for Brian De Palma to layer his critique on the music industry, his commentary on the commodification of art, and his thoughts on the slavish devotion created by pop culture, with other literary references and unique, exciting visual storytelling. This film is, dare I say, a masterpiece. Absolute cinema. And that is why it is going all the way up to the top, nestled next to the novel as one of my new favorite adaptations. All right. Okay. What a wild ride that was. What a film. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're enjoying these as much as I'm enjoying making them. It is so fun for me to talk about Phantom and dig into these movies, especially when I get to be surprised by something as cool as Phantom of the Paradise. And I just feel like here at the end of this very long video, there's so much I could have gone into that I didn't even touch on. I didn't even have time to look at half the special features on my Blu-ray. There's an interview with Paul Williams, moderated by Guillermo del Toro, that I didn't even know it was on there. You know what this means? This means Guillermo del Toro is Phantom adjacent. He's circling the property. Listen, say it with me. Guillermo del Toro, 8-episode miniseries. Jamie Campbell Bower as the Phantom. My vision is pure. My vision is right. It's what needs to happen. I know Phantom of the Paradise is beloved by many who've been watching this movie for years. It's a cult classic. So even though I didn't get to touch on everything, I hope I did the movie justice. Like and subscribe so you don't miss the next installment of 100 Years of Phantom, where I'll be going over the 1983 made-for-TV Phantom of the Opera starring Maximilian Schell as the Phantom and Jane Seymour, Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman herself, as Christine. And please comment below if you have any idea at all what was going on with the birds. I feel like it's probably really obvious, but I just can't see it. Maybe I'm thinking about it too deeply. But then again, maybe I'm not thinking deeply about it enough. But in any case, I have to go now. I have to be done with this. Okay, that's all. Jesus loves you. Bye. Woo! That's the sauce.